What up, Wizards? Dev, Mtg. You are live on Twitch for the full set review speedrun. Aren't you a lucky dog? Don't you wish you were here? Hey, just follow on Twitch. It's completely free to do so. Link in the description. Now, I am already on the clock, so I have to explain the rules very quickly here. We're going to go through every single card in the set and rate it for competitive constructed play. That means we're not going to talk too much about Commander or Limited tonight. This is mostly standard talk and obviously beyond modern, historic, Pioneer, Legacy, Vintage, pre-modern, 99, 98, whatever. There's a lot of different formats. Pauper, right? So we might talk about that a little bit, but mostly we're rating the cards on a scale of 0, a scale of 0 to 5. For standard playability with, quarter points, half points, 3/4 of a points, all that included. So if you want a quick rundown, basically anything from 0 to 1.5 is kind of limited playable. Some of the lower end of standard playable at your 1.5s, maybe niche role-playing cards and stuff like that. Starting from 1.5 to like 2.5, you've got, again, standard role players that are a little bit more likely to see play, slightly more powerful cards. Sometimes budget decks might be built around them, things like that, but they're never going to be, extremely powerful cards in standard. But, again, they're fun brew arounds. Let me move this. There we go. It was like a piece of cat fuzz waving in the camera there. But I bet you that you enjoy it. Thank you. You're welcome. Anyway. But yeah, slightly more likely to see standard play up to 2.5 and such. Anything from 2.5 to about 3.5 are going to be very powerful cards that are almost certain to see standard play. Anything from 3.5 and up is going to be, if not format defining, then format shaping or warping. And yes, those are different things. You're very likely not going to see a 5 tonight. They don't often print 5s, especially in standard legal sets and such. So I imagine that a card in this set probably tops out at 4 1/4 or something like that. But I could be wrong. We'll see. There's a lot of very powerful stuff in this set, but I'm already seeing, we'll see if this theory bears out towards the end. I'm already kind of looking at this set as a set that is powerful on average, but not overpowered almost anywhere, right? And that's the kind of set that I like. I think the design the design space was used very well in this set. They made interesting cards that will be powerful, but again, I don't think any of these really overtake the format. Put those words on my tombstone. Now let's go ahead and get into it now that we've laid the ground rules. That only took 2.5 minutes. That's not terrible. So let's get in. And this time we're doing it in alphabetical order. I wondered how to do it. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining myself, but usually we do it by color, but I felt like it would be better if I could do this. You see how the card's on the screen like that? You see how it's big and you can read the entire thing? And there's not 7 cards on screen at one time like there usually are during these set reviews. I just felt like this would be better. So I know that some people like to scrub through colors till they get to the card they want. This time, just do it alphabetically. It's not that hard. So let's move into the actual set review and start with 2 of the most complicated cards in the entire set. That's fun. But once we get them out of the way, right? We got Agatha of the Vile Cauldron. This is a green and a red for a 1/1. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, where X is Agatha's power. This effect can't reduce it to less than 1 mana. And of course, it's got the activated ability that makes your creatures bigger and gain trample and all that till end of turn. This is probably just fine. Okay, sweet little commander, but I'm, again, not going to talk too much about that format tonight if I can help it, but I'm just going to give this like a 2.5, like right in the dead center middle. I do think that this is a really powerful line of text. This first line of text is actually somewhat powerful, even if it's only reducing activated abilities by 1. It's probably doing something cool for you, even in a format like standard, where you can probably engineer some fun stuff. But I just haven't seen anybody come up with anything super cracked for Agatha yet, so I'm just going to put her dead center, and honestly, that is slightly higher than I would like to rate her, given some of the cards I'll probably assign 2.5 to tonight. So let's move on to Agatha's Champion. Oh, I thought we were going to get the Vile Cauldron next. Champion is just a limited playable card. It is a 5 mana dude that's a 4/4 trample. If you bargain, it fights a guy. That's actually not terrible, but it's also not super standard playable. But for limited, this is a very good card. I'll give it a 1.5. I get the Soul Cauldron. That's what I thought we were going to get next. This thing is fairly complicated, but when you think about it, it's not actually that complicated. Let's look at the last ability first. Tap to exile a card from a graveyard. When a card's exiled this way, you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Now, creatures with you control with +1/+1 counters, on them have all activated abilities of the creatures that you've exiled with the Cauldron, right? And you can spend mana or any color to activate the abilities. I think looking at it in reverse is actually better, right? Because if you should look at the first ability first, the card's kind of not bad. 2 mana, tap, exile a card from a graveyard. Okay. sideboard playable, sort of already close, And then when you do that, you get a +1/+1 counter, which is actually not bad. If you're exiling a creature just about every turn, then this is an extra counter. Every turn's like a 2-mana, it's like a Luminarch Aspirant. 2 mana for a counter a turn, and you get to play around in graveyards. So that's not bad, even if you're not hitting a bunch of stuff with activated abilities. I think this is slightly better than Agatha, all things considered. But it can't be your commander. So there's that. But I will give this like a 2.75. I think that it might have some interesting work to do, which you'll hear me say about a card or two in this set, right? There's a lot of really cool design in the set. I think this is among those really cool designs, but I'm not sure how great it actually is. That said, just any deck can play it, play around in graveyards, mess with their, Atraxa strategies, their reanimator stuff, and get counters, Got to have creatures in play, but how hard is that? So I don't know. There could be something here. Let's move on to Aquatic Alchemist. This card's kind of bad. It just kind of is. 2 mana, 1/3 creature. It's got a sorcery adventure where you can put an instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library. It's not terrible, but the fact that the sorcery halves an adventure, or the adventure halves a sorcery, really kind of hurts it for me an awful lot. So there's a creature in this set that costs 3 mana with Bargain, and you can just bring an instant or sorcery back from your graveyard to your hand. I think that guy's actually kind of all right. This I don't like anywhere near as much, so I'm just going to give this like a 1.25, something like that. I think it's okay in a limited where you can put back removal and stuff on top of your library, and that's kind of all right. But let's move on to Archive Dragon. This is just a 6 mana 4/6 flying ward 2 when it ETB scry 2. So it's got very funny flavor text. I think the flavor text is the best thing about the card, and it's just a kind of a limited game ender, threatener sort of, but nothing beyond that. Let's give it a 1.5. Archon of the Wild Rose. This has a chance in the green-white enchantments deck, but I really doubt it. It looks a bit too scuffed to end up there, so I'm just going to give this guy, by the way, he's the 4 mana 4/4 flyer that gives the dude you're enchanted by auras that you control, makes them have power and toughness 4/4, and they have flying. So I would probably, if I'm going to play a 4 mana card in that deck, just play like Hallowed Haunting or something. This could be a silver bullet and be neat, but I'm not too convinced. It looks kind of bulky to me. I'm just going to give it a 2.25. Let's move on to Archon's Glory. This actually doesn't look bad as a combat trick, right? If you bargain it, the creature gains flying and lifelink, and it just gives it +2/+2 no matter what for a single mana at instant speed. That's okay, right? But it won't see any standard play whatsoever. It's just kind of okay in limited. It's kind of actually very good, I think, in limited, but not talking too much about that format. Let's just give it a 1.5. Armory Mice is up next. One of the many 2 mana 3/1s in the set, but not the best looking one. Maybe when that other set with all the animals in it comes out, we'll get like a mouse deck, but for now it's just not really coming together. I'm going to give this a 1.25. Ashiok's Reaper, neat card, dude. I really want to rate this highly, but I kind of can't. This is the thing that whenever an enchantment's put into the graveyard, you draw a card. So it's a Ephemerate Enchantress, kind of. It costs double Ephemerate Enchantress, so there is that. But I still think it's a pretty unique effect we've only seen a couple of times, or if not just once ever, on a card. So Ephemerate Enchantress $26 right now. So this is a pretty powerful text box, but I don't know how good it actually is in competitive environments. So I'm just going to give this a solid 2.5, something like that. Ashiok, Wicked Manipulator, a pretty solid Planeswalker, on which I really like this passive ability too, but only Planeswalker in the set. We're only going to get one per set for a while, it is what I hear. So, and this is a good one, man. This seems like a solid Planeswalker for Black X decks, or just mono black decks too. Probably one of the better 5 mana walkers that we've had in a while. I guess we just had Loth when the Dungeons and Dragons set was out, and it was good, but I think this is somewhat comparable, right? You can get 2 guys off of it like you could Loth. And there's a card advantage mode too that actually pluses it, so it's good. So I don't know. I really kind of like Ashiok, but I think that it's at a good place in terms of power level. So I'll just give this a 3.25. I think that's about where it sits. Ash, Party Crasher. I do like this thing, man. A 2 mana 2/2 haste that gets counters if it meets the celebration trigger. This is okay, but how okay is it? I'm just going to give this a 2.75. I think it sits around there somewhere. Not quite a 3. I know that seems really charitable, but if there's a Boros aggro deck, I do think this will be kind of a key piece in it. So we'll wait and see about it. Asinine Antics, one of the 2 blue sweepers in the set. A card destined for Commander. I'm not sure how actually this is playable in Standard, to be honest. I wish that it made them all legitimate business people and they lost abilities. I think it'd be a lot better if it did that. But you could also note that this is like a one-sided Wrath, and that's not terrible. But I just think you've got better options most of the time. I'm not going to be fooled by too many blue sweepers. I've made that pledge to myself. So I'll just give this a 2.5. It's got room to grow. A Tale for the Ages. This is the thing that gives all your dudes with auras on them +2/+2 for 2 mana. Standard playable maybe, but I'm not sure how good it's actually going to be in the green-white enchantments deck. It just doesn't really put auras on too many guys. It's got Audacity, and what else? So I think it has to be in like its own kind of deck. And for the time being, and into the foreseeable future too, the green-white enchantments deck is going to be the only way to play that deck, like the existing one with the Kamigawa cards. I'm just not really sure this sneaks in. So great commander card. And if the right standard deck comes along, it'll be great. So like in a vacuum, I give this card a 3, but in the current standard that we're in right now, within context of that meta, it's like a 2.75. I'll deduct a 1/4 point from it for that. But let's move on to Back for Seconds. Interesting card here. For 3 mana, you can get a 4 mana guy for free and another card. It's card advantage no matter what you do. So that's kind of neat. I like this card a good bit, and I'm going to score it a 2.75. It's probably lower than that. This card is probably a 2.25, but I'll give it a 2.75 because I think it might have some work to do in Standard. It's not bad. Barrow Naughty is up next. This is a bad card. It just isn't good. It could look attractive to some, right? 2 mana, 1/3 flyer. It has lifelink if you have another fairy, it pumps, but no. Limited sort of fairy enabler plus mana sink. That's all it really is. So I'll give it a 1. Well, solid 1. Playable and limited. Beanstalk Worm is up next. This guy's cool. This is the dude that has the adventure. You can play an additional land, and he's a 5/4 reach on the creature half. I will stick to my guns on this. This kills Tolarian Terror trades, but it also kills Haughty Djinn and trades because it has reach. It kills Sheldred and trades. It trades with all these things, but I think these are kind of important stat lines to trade with in your ramp deck. So I think this might actually have a shot of seeing Standard play. I'm going to give this a 2.5. I think it's right around there. Not super powerful, but potentially playable, right? Bellowing Bruiser up next. This is not great. It's 5 mana, 4/4 haste. It's got sorcery where dudes can't block. It's just kind of fine. We'll give it a 1.25. Belligerent of the Ball, one of the better names in the set, sort of, very Lord of the Rings, the movies inspired cave troll looking guy here, but he's an ogre. Anyway, this is a 3 mana, 3/3, and he kind of does a slight impression of like a Reckless Stormseeker or something, but just nowhere near as good. So I'll give him a 1.5, sure. Balloona Grand Squall. Yeah, the adventure lady, the adventure giant. I want to like this too. I think it might have a place in Standard, especially given its pretty decent stat line and the trample and all that. So I like it. I'll give it a 2.75. It is a little difficult to play, and it's in a color combination that people really don't play right now. But maybe somebody can take advantage of the mill mode on it. And it's just a pile of stats, too, so I'm sure. Balloona's Gatekeeper. Not amazing. It does have this sorcery half that bounces a small guy, but that's about it. Decently playable and limited, maybe, but for the most part, I'll give it like a 1.5. Removal mode on it, sure, 1.5. Beseech the Mirror, one of the more expensive cards in the entire set, if you didn't know that about it. I have to give Beseech a 3.75. I think this card is the real deal. We'll see. This is one of those that I think I might be wrong about. This is one of those that I most think I might be wrong about, but it slots directly into a deck that is already played and goes and gets the most powerful card in the deck, arguably, Sheldred. So just for no other use case than that, the card will see play day 1. We'll see if it continues to see play, but obviously this can go and get anything, right? A removal spell, a card draw spell, a graveyard trespasser if you have to eat an Atraxa that turn, like all kinds of stuff. So you have to find things to bargain for it, right? But even if you don't bargain it, it's a Diabolic Tutor, so, whatever. Diabolic Tutor is not good enough for Standard, but there's game states that mode is fine in. I don't want to spend too long on any one card here, but I will justify 3.75. I think this card is very real. Perhaps even in formats beyond Standard where there's more options to go grab with this. You know, it's not like color coded. You can just go get any 4-drop at all, and that seems unbelievably good to me. So I think it's a good card. I think it's one of the better cards in the set. Besotted Knight is up next. This is not one of the better cards in the set, but however, let me just say that this sorcery part is not bad for like spell decks that want to cast a bunch of spells, Illuminator Virtuoso decks and such like that. This puts 2 counters on it and gives it an extra an instance of ward. So all that's kind of neat. I think it might work in a deck or two, but again, super duper niche. I'm going to give this a 1.75. Bespoke Battle Garb, just a good name for a card. That's about all it really is. You could get a free equip on this fairly easily, and it's only a couple of mana, so it's not useless, but I'm still just going to give this like a 1.5. It's not great. Bestial Bloodline is up next. This is just 2 mana for +2/+2. It's an aura. Those are kind of somewhat important in a limited environment. And it comes back to your hand, but it is not Rancor. In no way is this Rancor, so I'm going to give this a 1.25. Bitter Chill is up next. This is an enchantment that taps a guy. It's one of those blue things. 2 mana, tap a guy. When Chill's put into the graveyard, you pay 1. If you do, scry, draw a card. So that's not bad. It's actually one of the better blue tap enchantments we've like ever seen, especially just a couple of mana. They often cost 3, but they don't typically cost 3. We've seen a lot of these cost 2 in the past. But it's one of the better versions of this that we've ever seen, if not the best. So for limited, it's quite good, but I'm just going to give it like a 1.75. I don't think it does too much. Blossoming Tortoise. A lot of people really like this card, like an awful lot. I think that it is a step too slow, but that is a heck of an ETB trigger right there. And the activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less. That is an undeniably powerful line of text, especially with creature lands in standard. And other stuff, you know, like this, the thing that makes like a Phyrexian Might token for you, Mirax. This makes that cost 1 less. There's all kinds of stuff this will affect just in standard. So I get the love for the card. It's a big, pretty turtle. So there's that too. But ultimately, I'm just going to give this a solid 3, which is a solid card. Remember, 3 is a pretty good score, but I'm just not as in love with it. I think there's just some people in this that would give this thing like a 3.5 or something, 3.75, and I'm just not there. I think it's a good, solid 3. But that makes a somewhat playable card in the right shell. Ha! So let's move on to Boundary Lands Ranger. This is 2 mana, 1 in red for a 2/2. Now, if you have a guy, power 4 or greater at beginning of combat, you discard and then draw. That's not bad. It's really not terrible. I don't know that it breaks into standard, but extra kind of draw that feeds your graveyard every turn, like, let's give it a 2. Right at a 2. Bramble Familiar. I was surprised that this card only costs like $2 on pre-order right now. It's probably going to go down way more after the set comes out. But this looks like a pretty powerful card to me. It looks like if you're going to play a Mana Dork in standard and you're not playing like 5 colors, you know, this is definitely one of the ones you want to consider first. And I love the sort of Turn Timber Symbiosis mode or whatever on it too. So it's a cool Mana Dork that is, you know, relevant in the late game, pops back to your hand and stuff. It's a cool guy. I think I'm going to give this guy like a 3.25. Like somewhere in there. That's not bad. Brave the Wild's up next. This is not bad either, man. This is the Lay of the Land that can also Rogue Elephant. It's really cool. Also love this art for what it's worth. It's cool. But all things considered, I can't really give this more than like a 2.5. Well, let's give it a 2.75. I don't know that it's actually playable in standard, but Lay of the Land is like a 2.25 by itself. So I'll give it, I think 2.5 was correct. I think 2.5 was correct. That's probably okay. Let's move on to Break the Spell. Some cards are in lower resolution. I can't do anything about that, and I apologize. But just a single mana for destroy target enchantment at instant speed is very, very good. Even if you bust up one of their tokens, you still draw a card. I think this is actually kind of great, and we'll see play in a ton of sideboards. So I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think it's that good. Callous Sellsword. What a neat card, man. The Fling adventure in the set. Cool guy, dude. I'm going to give this guy 3. Am I going to do that? Let's give him a 2.75. I'm going to give him a 2.75. I think this Fling mode is awesome. I really do think that's great. Candy Grapple next. Good pun. Instant speed -3/-3 is kind of a playable Magic card. And then destroy target Sheoldred or Tolarian Terror or whatever. The other mode is not bad either. So, I think I have to give it like a 2.25 just because it's a pretty solid removal spell. but it's not, exciting. Candy Trail is up next. I like this too. I want to give this a 2.25 as well. A single mana, scry 2 when it ETBs. It's an artifact, food, and a clue. You can tap it, sack it, gain 3, draw a card. I really should give this like a 2.5. I think this is almost there, man. Really sweet little egg here. It very much is. I think it's good. Chancellor of Tales is up next. This is the new Lucky Clover. It is not good. Card is bad. In limited, this would be somewhat playable if you have enough adventures, but even in standard, where you have more control over your deck and like 30 of your cards are adventures, it's still, I just don't. It's not good. Don't play it, probably. So, let's give it a 2. Let's give it a 2. Charm Clothier is next. This is not amazing at 5 mana, so let's just give it a 1.25. Charming Scoundrel. Oh, Charming Scoundrel. Carmen Sandiego. You are a great card. This is a phenomenal Magic card here. Do you trust me? She's doing the Aladdin thing, right? Do you trust me? Do you trust me? Anyway, she's, and I do. I shouldn't, but I do. My goodness. This card is a 4. This card gets a 4 and a quarter. Yeah, man. I'm looking into her eyes. This card gets a 4 and a quarter. This is an amazing Magic. I think this is just an incredible Magic card, dude. Really, really good. So, is that it? I think that's all I have to say about it. I also have more to say about it in the top 10 and stuff. This I've spent enough time. This card's a 4 and a quarter. This is a very good Magic card. Cheeky House Mouse. What is the standard rating for a Savannah Lion in this day and age? Especially with this kind of gravy. This is not the worst gravy in the world, right? So let's give it a 2.5. Right? Yeah, sure. Maybe a 2.75, but we'll go 2.5. Apparently I have 2 of these. Let's go to Collector's Vault. This is interesting maybe in Commander, and I guess it interests some people in Standard and slow roll decks, but I think the argument goes something like if Celestis can see play, this can see play, but no. I don't think that's true, so I'm just going to give this like a 1.75, somewhere in there, but it could be as much as a 2. I've got 2 of these. Let's Commune with Nature next. This is great art, by the way. It's just great. This is a wonderful art for this card, but we've seen Commune with Nature before. What is Commune with Nature? A 2.25, sure. Conceited Witch is up next. This is not super great. So I'll just give this 1.25. Cooped Up. This is a pacifism with upside, and pretty sweet upside. You used to exile it eventually, so pacifism would be worth a 2.25. Let's give this a 2.25 as well. Pacifism's a 2, really, so this is 2.25, sure. Cruel Somnophage, the Lurgoyf in the set. This guy's great, man. We're going to push that old Stick Fingers Urborg Lurgoyf deck into Sultai. It could already be Sultai because, there's Kicker of Blue on Urborg Lurgoyf, but now we're forced to play Sultai because we have to play this dude. He's so good. But he's really just kind of restricted to that deck, I think, so I'm probably going to just give this a 2.5. I'd like to give it more than that, but it's really niche. Crystal Grotto is up next. What is Crystal Grotto? 1.25. No, it's more than that. It's more than that. This sees play in mono red still sometimes. Crystal Grotto is a 2.25. It really is. This sees play from time to time. Cursed Courtier is up next. This is not great. Let's give it a 1. Sure. Curse of the Werefox. This is a fight effect at sorcery speed. It's just, there's so many things that outclass it. Even in its own set, there's 2 cards that outclass it, even though it attaches the monster roll. So, I don't know, man. I'll just give it a 1.75. Cut In is up next. 4 damage to a creature. Oh no, it's sorcery speed. So, 1.5. Only playable and limited, but pretty playable there. Decadent Dragon. Oh, Decadent Dragon. Good boy right here. Really good boy. If only he had haste, but then he'd just be Goldspan Dragon. So I guess he can't be. Great looking card though, isn't it? Really sweet card. I imagine a lot of turns are just gonna be EOT expensive taste. My turn, Decadent Dragon. Even if the dragon dies, you can still play the cards you got with expensive taste for the rest of the game. But it doesn't say you can play them with any mana. That sucks. But I guess this gives you your land drops, maybe. There's that. And like, depending on what you're playing against, you might be able to play the thing. So whatever. Just a very sweet card, in my opinion. I'm going to give this a 3.5. Sure, 3.5. I wanted to say 3.25. If you're wondering which way I was leaning there, but just say 3.5. Devouring Sugar Maw up next. I really like the adventure mode on this, and I wouldn't really be considering it if it didn't have this adventure mode. So I'm just going to give this a solid 3. I think it's a fine card. Not a whole lot more than fine, but pretty freaking fine. That adventure mode is nice. Diminisher, which it could be way better than I acknowledge with that one. It could be way better than I'm scoring it. Diminisher Witch up next. This is kind of neat. You know, you get a body that also sort of kind of removes one of their guys. Like this 3/2 outclasses their 1/1. Right, so there's that. I'm going to give this like a 1.75, something like that. Discerning Financier. Ooh, I like this dude. I do like this guy, man. Commander playable, I think, like certainly. But what we're going to give this for like standard and beyond is, oh, this one's tough. It's tough. Solid 2. Solid 2, I think. Right there. This could see 2.25. I'll bump it up slightly. 2.25. This isn't that impressive. I don't want to give it as much as a 2.5. You might be shocked at this kind of lowish rating, but I think it's niche playable in like mono white, slow roll with the planeswalkers and stuff. And the other stuff like Ambitious Farmhand, Spirited Companion, like a deck like that, it's probably okay in, you know. There's a ton of 3-drops you might rather play than this. There's a lot of really powerful 3s. I'm just not sure. Maybe you play 1 or 2 of this. Probably never a 4 of, but I could be really wrong. This could be as much as a 3, and I'm gonna stick with 2.25 here. I think that this will disappoint you when you do play it in standard, but it has its roles. But again, those roles are fairly narrow and only for like one deck, so we'll see. We'll see about it. I want to be proven wrong here, but 2.25, 2.5 is as high as I could possibly go on this. Disdainful Stroke. Up next, what's up, WinCube? What's going on? Just want to shout you out for the video. He does it. Kevin Sama, he does it like the bad guy from Pocahontas. His name is Radcliffe. I was going to say he looks like Radcliffe too, but I thought that would be esoteric. But then I look over and somebody in chat has said that he absolutely does look like Radcliffe. It is worth adding time to the speedrun to point out. Dude, you and I, simpatico. But Disdainful Stroke, we know this card exists. What does Disdainful Stroke get? 2.5. Just an example of how a 2.5 can be a very good card. But again, niche applications, you often see it in sideboards. Dream Spoilers is up next. I think this card is kind of neat, but probably not actually constructed playable. So I'll just give it like a 1.75. Dutiful Griffin up next. Same kind of description. I think this card's neat, but you're never going to really play this in standard very likely. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Let's move on to Edgewall In. Neat card, dude. Super neat card. 2.5. 2.5 for in. Again, super obviously niche applications. But in the decks it's in, it's going to be like a 3 or 4 of probably. So we'll see about it. Edgewall Pack. Just a really funny card. It's just all this card exists to be is funny. So and it pulls it off. So good job. Good job. I'm in the Wolf Pack as well. But I guess we have to score it. So I'll give it a 1.25. Eerie Interference is up next. The Fog Effect that's better than a Fog Effect. So I'm going to give it a 3 mana. A little scuffed, right? So let's just give it a 1.5. Ego Drain. Oh, Ego Drain. Ego Tripping is up next. This is the Thoughtseize for fairies. When you have fairies, it's a Thoughtseize. That seems like a good card. You're not playing it till turn 2 ever. So there's that. But Thoughtseize is probably still pretty okay on turn 2. So, you know, we're even on like turn 4. It's probably still fine. So I'm going to give this card a 3. Sure. Elusive Otter. I love Elusive Otter, dude. I'm going to hate to do this to it because I'm just going to give it like a 2.75, you know? But again, playable and standard at 2.75. But the deck that it's in is really niche and probably not a great deck. But this could just go in like Venerated Rot Priest. You know, it could just do that. So definitely somewhat playable, but again, super narrow. Really awesome dude. I ought to give this a 3, but let's keep it at 2.75. Elvish Archivist. I'm in love. This is the thing that triggers when you do artifacts, and it also triggers when you do enchantments. One of the better commander cards in the entire set. Get yourself a copy of this. I would say if you play commander, or if you want to have a card that's worth money 5 years from now, I'd say get a copy of Archivist. Really sick dude right here. Or lady? It looks like a lady. But just awesome. For standard, I don't really know what I can give this, but obviously there's applications. So I'm going to go all the way to 2 to 3. Let's give it a 3. Let's give it a 3. Sure, man, that is more than I want to give it. But this is an undeniably powerful card, right? But it's narrow. I'm pushing it down to 2.75. I'm sorry. It is a little narrow for standard. It's a little slow for standard. And if it's slow for standard, it's probably slow for other formats too. So this is obviously a Commander all-star, but even there it only triggers once a turn, you know, and like one of them's, oh, it's a +1/+1 counter, who cares? But I don't know. I guess if you go Teething Wormlet on 1, this on 2, you have a 1/1 and a 0/1. That's not good. That's not good. That's not good. It takes multiple turns to get this up to like a 3/4. So I'm not like super convinced, but I'm going to stick at 2.75 here. This is a powerful card. Embereth Veteran, another Savannah Lions, but this one has some value on it too. So what do you give these? I give it a 2.75. I think that it's probably slightly more likely to see play in certain decks, but I guess in certain decks, what in red we have like Monastery Swiftspear, Kumano. Are you going to play this over that? Probably not. So, 2.5. We'll go 2.5 on this. I just like Savannah Lions too much. This should probably be a 2.25, but I overrate Savannah Lions. I just really like them. Arietti of the Charmed Apple. Is it actually good in standard? I guess we'll find out. It's going to be on the first Patreon poll. I expected to do fairly well there, so cannot wait to play this deck. But I have to be realistic about whether or not it's actually good in standard. And I'm not like 100% convinced that it is, but I think that it could be. As a commander, it's just delicious, wonderful card. And she's owning it too. Look at this look she's serving. Look at this dress with the flowers. My goodness, just a wonderful card. But as far as like actual competitive applications, I'm just going to give this a 2.75 as well. For a lot of the same reasons I could list at the other card. It's just like, is this actually as good as you want it to be in a fast-paced competitive environment? I'm not sure, but it's a very sweet card. It's still worth a 2.75. Arietti's Tempting Apple. Interesting to have this effect on an artifact, but, let's say 2. Just give it a 2. And even that is pushing it, to be honest. Arietti's Whisper. This is a Mind Rot that costs more mana and has some small amount of gravy on it. It's not great, so let's give it a 1.25. Evolving Wilds is Evolving Wilds. What do you rate Evolving Wilds? These are some of the more interesting challenges in these videos. I'll give Evolving Wilds a 2. A flat 2. I'll do that. Evolving Wilds is probably like a 2.25 at least, actually. When you really get down to thinking about it, it's a good card. Expel the Interlopers, the white sweeper in the set. That's like, you can choose what dudes it kills. I think this might be like sleepery. I think that at this point, a lot of people are conditioned to be like, yeah, it's a sweeper, and we move on. But I think this might have some applications. That said, you're probably always going to be leaving some dudes on your opponent's side if you leave some dudes on your side, so it's probably not that great. Likely better options, we've got Sunfall at 5 mana too, so I'll just give this like a 2.25. It's a sweeper, Extraordinary Journey, really neat card. What a neat card this is, man. I'm just going to give this a 2.5. Yeah. This one isn't narrow. This one has a ton of applications. That's the thing about it. It's a very versatile piece here, which makes me assign the 2.5. I really want to give it a 2.25, but I'll say 2.5. Fairy Dream Thief. What a cool card, man. We did see a couple of neat fairies in the set that only cost 1 mana that enable all these, cheap fairy cards, like that Thoughtseize. That's a Thoughtseize if you have a fairy. This one looks okay, it does a bunch of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a 1 mana 1/1. But it fulfills a bunch of different roles. So I'm just going to give this card like a 2. Sure, 2. I think it's playable, though, in the Fairies deck. I do. Fairy Fencing. This is the nameless inversion. That sort of, right? It's the thing that gives the thing -3/-3. They give -X/-X, and blah, blah, blah. If you have a fairy, they get the -3/-3 for free or whatever. So this is okay. Again, in the Fairies deck, it's a super narrow application, so I'm not going to give it more than like a 2 or a 2.25 even. Something like that. I guess you can play it outside of the Fairies deck. Why would you ever do that? So 2.25. Farsight Ritual. Neat thing. Is it better than Memory Deluge? Probably not, but Memory Deluge is a heck of a card to be compared to. So 2.75. I think it's a good card. Fawn's Bane Troll. Neat thing right here. I actually really like this guy, man. It basically, it can fight a guy. It's a 4-mana 5/5 that can fight a guy. That's really good. So I think this is actually sweet, dude. I'm gonna give this card a 3. I don't care what you say. I mean, this card seriously gets a 3 from me, dude. Feed the Cauldron. It's fine. We'll give this card a 1.5. Fell Horseman. It's fine. Maybe halfway decent and limited, where it's kind of a Gravedigger, like slightly, kind of a little. But whatever. I'm still just gonna give it like a 1.5. Feral Encounter, another fight spell from the set that also kind of gets you some card advantage if you have extra mana to spend. Love the art, by the way. Every time I looked at this art, I've just seen the wolf. I have not seen Ruby shooting an arrow through it. That's neat. I was gonna say like it's kind of cruel because no puppy, but like it's gonna kill her, so she's got to do what she's got to do. I would say that this card is like not as good as I want it to be. So I'll give this like a 2.25. I actually think it's going to disappoint you some of the time. Ferocious Werefox. This is a limited card, 1.25. Flick a Coin. Neat thing right here. I'm going to give this a solid 2. I like it, but I don't know if it's actually standard playable. Food Fight. Again, I really like this card. I don't even know if it's Commander playable, though. You only play 1 in Commander. Maybe there's ways to like copy your enchantments and stuff, but I don't know. I want this card to be good somewhere, and I want it to be better than I think in Standard, but I don't think it's better than I think. I think it's as good as I think it is, which isn't very good. So I'm going to give this like a 2.5. Fun Scale, 4.25. Frantic Firebolt is okay. This could be playable at like in red-blue spells decks or something as a thing that kills 5 toughness creatures or something. You could do that. So it does have narrow applications. I'll give it a 2.25. I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. Let's stick to that. Freeze in Place. This is sorcery speed at 2 mana. Put 3 stun counters on a thing and scry 2. That's better than you think it is. In a mono blue tempo deck, this is just kind of like destroy target creature. It's in some cases, and scry 2 is really good gravy. So I don't know, better than it looks, but not amazing. I'll just give it a 2. Seriously, I know what I've given a 2 so far tonight. So I should give this a 1 3/4. 1.75 is where I've been parking these very limited playable, but not quite standard playable niche applications. So that's probably what I should give this 1 3/4. Frolicking Familiar. Oh, what a little guy, man. But he's probably not that playable in standard. Not that playable. So I'm just gonna give this guy a 2.25. Sure, he's cool. The guy's great. Windrake with the most upside we've ever seen on like a Windrake. Probably not true statement, but a lot of upside for a Windrake, so he's really good. Frostbridge Guard, not too impressed, 1.5. Somewhat playable and limited if you've got extra mana laying around, but you have to have that extra mana. Gabwick's First Duel. I like this card, man. I do like this card. I'm not going to give it more than a 2.5. I'm not going to do that, but I do think this card might have some labor. It might just be punching in day one with some work to do. New guy in the office, coming in like a maverick, changing things up. Probably not. Probably won't shake up standard too much, but I do think this is a cool card to look out for. So at least a 2.5. Gallant Pie Wielder, not a great card. 1.25. Sure. Galvanic Giant. Neat, actually. Actually, kind of a little bit neat, but probably still not worth playing in anything standard. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75 as well. Gingerbread Hunter. 1.75 for Hunter as well, too. I don't think that it's quite standard playable. Not quite, especially at 5 mana, but it's a little better than limited playable. I really should give this a 1.5, to be honest. Gingerbread up next. What is the grade for a Gingerbread? What do you give Gingerbread? My goodness. Do I get to defer to chat once per night? Once per speedrun, can I defer to chat? What is Gingerbread, guys? What is Gingerbread? Pie Wielder? I hardly know her. It's funny. That's a good one. A 10 A+ on that one. He's awesome. I need to score 2.5 from TCG Tony. Yeah, 2.25, 3.5, 3, 2. I'm getting some joke scores maybe. 2, 2.5. IGN 7.5 out of 10. Actual Cat Lady says 2. Boombox says 3. He's okay, yeah. 3 will for sure see play. Well, you know, 2 can see play. I like 2. I think 2 is about where Brute sits. I agree with the 2ers in chat, I think. Yeah, sure. That's my one lifeline though. But I will feel free to take another one if I want to. Moving on to Glass Casket. What do you give Glass Casket? Ossifications in this format. You know, it's an artifact. That could be niche important. So I don't know. I think Glass Casket is solid enough to get like a 2.25, something like that. Gnawing Crescendo. This is a Burn Bright, guys. To people in chat that know me, it's a Burn Bright with this incredible upside. When they block and kill your guys, you get 1/1 rats for them having done that. That's kind of neat. I'm not going to score this card super high, but like it's a Burn Bright. It gives you the rats. It's a 1.75. Godric, Cloaked Reveler. To clarify, I've seen somebody a couple people actually in the comments be like, I don't think this has haste when it becomes a dragon. It does. There's no reason it would lose haste. It doesn't say it loses all of its other abilities or anything. It just becomes a dragon. There's nothing about this that says it loses haste. Nothing about that. So it just gains these abilities. It doesn't lose any abilities. So it'll still have the haste. I think this card is playable. So I'm going to give it a 2.75. Almost a 3. You know, very close to a 3. Godric is daddy. Yes, look at him. Look at that, man. Whew. He is very, don't look at him too long. He is very handsome. He will charm you. But let's move on to Grabby Giant. This dude's neat, man. This is neat. This is the guy that for 2 mana and instant speed makes a treasure token, but you also get a 4 mana 4/3 reach. Again, takes out Haughty Djinns. That's kind of neat. It doesn't kill Sheldrids. It doesn't kill Tolarian Terrors or other like 5 toughness things, and that kind of sucks. But still, it kind of ramps into itself, right? You know, so you kind of do an impression of Bone Crusher Giant, a 3 mana 4/3. I kind of like him. I don't know that he's standard playable, but I will give this guy a 2. I will give this guy a 2. I think that's mine is, you know, we've got other stuff at 2 mana that makes treasure tokens, and it sees fringe play. So I think that, you know, this is doable, something like that. Graceful Takedown. I still do not get how it's graceful. Just everyone gang tackles the guy and bites him. It's not graceful. But this reminds me of like Kung Fu Panda, right? The Furious 5 going in. But either way, those are just things I like about the card. The card itself is probably just like a 1.5, something like that. Grand Ball Guest is not super great. We'll just give this a 1.25. Greta, I think Greta's okay, man. I think Greta's okay. Leave the poor Candy alone. It's Candy, you child. Anyway, it doesn't matter if I'm sure all this Candy and Agatha probably traumatized her and killed her brother. But come on, it's Candy. This is probably like a 2.75. I actually really like this card and think that it might be somewhat playable. It does an awful lot as a 3-drop. Draws cards in your Golgari deck. I think that's worth noting right there. So this card is, I think this is pretty good, man. I want to give it a 3, but I'm going to keep it just under 3, 2.75. Gruff Triplets is up next. I really want to like this, but it's probably just, you know, bulk green 6-drop. So let's go 1.75 on that. Gumdrop Poisoner. Again, I want to like this, but I'm not sure it actually gets there, but it sure does do a lot. It sure does do a lot. So I'll give this a solid 2.25. That's probably where I want to park this. Sure. Hamlet Glutton is not very good outside of limited where it's just okay. So we'll give this a 1.25. Sure. Harried Spearguard. This is actually kind of neat, you know. It's a Doom Traveler effect, kind of. Crawling Chorus thing that I do like. It has haste. That's cool for aggro. It leaves body behind. You can do stuff with the bodies. You can sacrifice them in Aristocrats. Like, okay, Aristocrats? Is that what we're doing? It's going to be Aristocrats. Aristocrats. That's the way you do it. Aristocrats. I'm going to make this work. But anyway, this is a 2.2. This is a 2. This is a 2.25. This is a 2.25. The haste, this is a 2.25 all day. This card is pretty good, dude. Heartflame Duelist, everybody is a good one, man. This one's actually pretty decent, dude. I have a fear it's not as good as I want it to be. But even if it's not as good as I want it to be, it's going to be pretty damn good. So I'm going to give this a 3, dude. And a quarter. Yeah. Yeah, man. 3 and a quarter. I think that's a solid adventure mode. More than solid adventure mode. Anytime an adventure mode is an instant speed removal spell, I think it's just like really off the charts good. And then this good line of text too, dude. Yeah, man. 3. We'll sit it at 3. That seems good to me. Hearth Elemental. Oh boy. Oh man, I don't know. Lightning Helix at home too. I think it's better than that. I see your point, Vash. All right. Hearth Elemental. Good card, dude. I honestly think this card is kind of very good. I'm gonna sit this at 3. Yes. Yeah. It's probably better than the card we just looked at. So think about it like that. I'm going to park this right at 3, and it could be a 3.5. It really could be, guys. Look out for this one. I think this card is actually very, very good. That's all I'm going to say. High Fae Negotiator. Limited playable, 1.5. It's okay there. Hollow Scavenger. This makes a food token for a single mana, but it's sorcery speed. It's still kind of okay, but it's not any better than a 1.5. Hopeful Vigil. This is kind of gets the gears turning a little bit, but I'm going to give this a 1.75. It's kind of all right. Hopeless Nightmare. This I kind of like. Just a single mana for an enchantment. When it comes into play, they discard a card. They lose 2 life. You get to scry 2 when it's put in a graveyard. You can force the scry 2 if you want to. Cool art. For what that's worth, and I think it is awesome art. But it's a good, I think this is like borderline pretty good, so I'll give this a 2.25. We'll give it a 2.25. I think this is all right. This is an okay card. That's probably too high, really. That's probably too high, but I'll stick to my guns, 2.25. Horned Lock Whale, man. I'm going to go out on a limb here and give this card a 3.25. I think this card is actually pretty powerful. This instant speed 2 mana pseudo removal spell is actually super duper annoying. Great at buying you time. I really like that about it. And then the creature half is just fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's a big blue finisher for control decks. It's fine. But I think it's worth playing this adventure half. I really do. 3.25. I think Whale is good, man. I love that you get a Free Willy reference too on this adventure half. That's nice. I've got a whole story in my head, by the way. You know how I said, it's in the lock. How many giant creatures are in this lock? You've got whatever its name was, Lock Serpent. That thing. Lochthwain Serpent. And now you've got Horned Lock Whale. Well, the story I've got in my head is that this adventure, this Lagoon Breach, is because it wanted to be with the monster so badly. It wanted to be with the monster so badly that it breached the ocean and into the lock to be with the love of its life. It free willied from the ocean to be with the monster. Anyway, I make up stories. Howling, that was a lot of time off the speedrun. Howling Galefang. Howling Galefang is up next. It isn't very good. It's just not super good. So I'm going to give this a 1.5. It's all right. Hilda of the Icy Crown. For some reason, it's mythic. It's just commander playable. I don't think the standard deck built around this is very good, to be honest. So 2.25. Hilda's Crown of Winter. Commander playable. I don't think it's very good outside of that. But in Commander, you probably draw a bunch of cards off of this from time to time. But I still don't think this is any more than like a 1.75. It costs an awful lot to get into play. That's for what it does. It does cost mana. We'll move on to Ice Out. So what do you give a cancel with upside, especially this one? 1.75. Ice Wrought Sentry up next. This card is fine. 1.5, sure. Imadane's Recruiter. Now, in case you want to know what this last one is, it is the thing I kept calling a 3-mana 4/4 during spoiler season, but just, it costs mana to do all this stuff. I don't know, man. I'm just not the biggest fan. I'm really not. I wish it was a 2-mana 2/2. Then we might be talking, but at 3-mana, 1.75. Imadane's Recruiter. This is the 5-mana adventure that puts 2/2/2 knights into play. And then Recruiter, when he ETBs, your creatures get +1/+0 and gain haste till end of turn, including the Recruiter. I think this is actually somewhat solid, like somewhat okay, especially if you draw it on like a later turn and you have planeswalkers in play. So like, okay, make a token with Wandering Emperor, put a +1/+1 counter on something. Really, just like make a token with Wandering Emperor, make a token with Eternal Wanderer, or something like that. You know, just make a token or two with planeswalkers, and then Imidane's Recruiter to give them haste plus the Recruiter. Suddenly you're swinging for like 6 to 9, something like that. Could be okay. I don't think it's quite standard playable, but I think that this is an interesting card to talk about. Again, an impression of like a Reckless Stormseeker or something here, which is kind of neat, but just not anywhere near as good as Stormseeker, all things considered. So I'm going to give this, however, a 2. I'm going to give it a 2. It ain't bad. It's not. Imidane the Pyro Hammer. I will also give this a 2. This is not super impressive looking in standard. Might be a fun burn commander in the 99 or something like that. Maybe Brawl, right? But in the actual constructed environment, standard at large, let's give it a 2. Ingenious Prodigy. I like this thing, man. I like this. I think that this might have more to it than meets the eye. I think even like, especially seasoned players see this and they're like, it looks neat, but it's for commanders and Timmies, and I don't like it. But I think that this might be one of those cards like Hydroid Krasis or something that goes, it fish hooks, it horseshoes back around, to being, it's so good of a Timmy card. It's so good of a commander card that's also good in standard, like a Krasis, I'm going to call these cards Krasises from now on. I think that this might be quite good. It scales. We don't see a lot of blue creatures that scale this way. It's got a neat little ability where if it comes into play with a small amount of power, it can't be blocked by huge guys. But if it comes into play with a lot of power, it can't be blocked by like anything. Well, it can't be blocked by smaller guys, but you could do like a thing where it can't be blocked specifically by like a 7 power guy, but it has 6 power. Oh, your Itali can't block this, but it's a 6/6. Like that could matter. Skulk is somewhat important sometimes. But really just the scalability on this and the extra cards. You don't have to draw the cards if you don't want to. I know you probably want to, but if you want to keep the stat line the way it is, you can do that too. So I just think there's kind of a lot to this, man. I'm going to give this a 3. This card gets a 3. Good for ninjutsu too. I like the way you think. I really do. So sick card. Very, very cool thing. Let me just say that. And it's rife for putting other +1/+1 counters on too. So that's kind of neat. But let's keep moving. So Into the Fate Court. This is just kind of a bad card, especially at sorcery speed. I'll give this a 1. Just a 1-er. Johan, Apprentice Sorcerer. This lets you cast instants and sorceries from the top, but it does cost 4 mana. That's kind of a lot. This looks like the kind of thing that was meant to have partner. But it doesn't, So I'm going to give this like a 2. It's probably not even that good, to be honest. But sure, a 2. Johan's Stopgap costs 2 less to cast if it's bargain, usually costs 4 mana. Return an on-land permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. If this had instant speed on it, we would really be talking. This would be a standard playable card if it was instant, but it's not. 1.5. Let's move on to Kellen's Light Blades. This is kind of neat. If you bargain it, you just destroy an attacker or blocker, but otherwise it's 3 damage to that creature at 2 mana. Probably won't see any standard play, but decent limited removal, 1.5. Kellen the Fey-Blooded, a neat commander, and they have confirmed that if you cast the sorcery half of this, the adventure half, it does contribute to commander tax. And I believe next time you'll have to pay 4 mana for Birthright Boon and stuff. Which is kind of gross. I don't know if I like that, to be honest. It would be abusable otherwise, so I guess that's good. But abusable would probably just make the red-white enchantments deck or equipments deck playable for once. So, but that's just commander we're talking about. In standard, I don't know, man. I'm not super impressed by these like red-white equipments cards. You have to really push these to make that deck playable. And I don't know that this does. I mean, it is a tutor, but you have to basically skip your turn 2 for it, or even skip your turn 4, because you'll play the tutor and then play the equipment on turn 4. And that's just, none of it seems great to me. A 3 mana 2/2 double striker is not the best. It's Phyrexian Dragon Engine or whatever. It's just not great. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's got the Anthem effect on it. I really want to like this, but I can't give it more than a 2.5. And that's low. That's low for what I think some people would assign to this, but it's probably not going to do a whole lot of work, to be honest. Let's hope I'm wrong, though. This is what I hope I'm wrong about. Kindled Heroism. It's just the same red combat trick we see in every set, and you get to scry 1 as well. So we'll give this a 1. We'll give this a 1. Knight of Doves. I haven't really talked about this card this season yet. This is one of those enchantment goes to the graveyard, you get a thing. In this case, you get a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying. This is good in limited. It's very good in limited, and I kind of want to try it in standard a lot. I think this is like the second best whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard thing in the entire set. But obviously this is niche, and even in the deck that it goes in, is it actually great? I think it's pretty good, but is it actually that good? So I'm just going to give this a 2.25. That seems like a very high score, but I have hopes. I have hopes. I should probably just give it a 2. Corvold and the Noble Thief. I don't like this card at all. I really don't. It's technically card advantage and ramp on one card. So that's cool, but I still just can't. I don't love it. So I'm going to give this. I do like the artist rendition of Corvold in the art here on this card, but I'm just going to give this like a 1.25. Leaping Ambush, the green combat trick we see in every set, and we really do see this one over and over, don't we? Let's give it a 1. Lich Knight's Conquest. This, man, I want this card to do wonderful, amazing things, but will it? Who knows? Somewhat doubtful, but I'm still going to give this like a 2.75. I think that this is an extremely powerful text box if you can set it up, and it shouldn't actually be that hard to set it up. Courier's Briefcase. Right? Courier's Briefcase not only like helps you ramp into this spell, but it also gives you something to sack to it. It's just there's all kinds of cards like that in standard, so shouldn't be super hard is all I'm saying. Let's see, Likeness Looter is up next. This card seems great to me. I don't know why I don't see more people talking about this. It looks pretty phenomenal, man. I'm gonna give this a solid 3. I think that it deserves it. I think it deserves a solid 3. Not gonna justify myself. I just think that I think there's lots of games where that last ability can be very busted. That's all I'm going to say. Living Lectern, not amazing, but some neat little, food for the limited environment. Literally no food on it, but you know what I'm saying. This feeds a bunch of mechanics in limited. It's a neat card. Also, for what it's worth, I really like the art on the bookcase. It looks like old school Magic art slightly. I like that an awful lot. But that's all. That's the best thing I can really say about the card and constructed. I like that bit of the art. So let's give it a 1.25. Lord Skitter's Blessing. Man, it's a good card. I think this is a good one, guys. Does all kinds of stuff in terms of enabling enchantments, right? But mostly it's Phyrexian Arena at a discount. Okay, pretty easy for them to take out your enchanted creature. So I don't know that you're going to draw the card like every turn guaranteed or anything, especially considering that, they're going to know which creature to target. It's not going to be that hard. I'm not like super convinced this is where I want it to be, but it looks pretty darn good. So I'm going to give it a 3. I will give it a 3. Lord Skitter's Butcher, old Ratatouille here. I think this is neat, but obviously not amazing outside of limited, but this is a fair amount of versatility such that I think this is cubable. I think this goes in this could possibly go in cubes and be a neat little guy. So I'm kind of excited for him there, but I don't know that he's very standard playable, even in the Rats deck. So I'm just going to give him a 2. I'm going to give him a 2, sure. Lord Skitter, Sewer King. You do get a 1/1 every turn. That's pretty good. That ain't bad. And you get to mess around in graveyards. That ain't bad. The stat line's fine too, so I want to give this a 3, but I'm probably going to give it a 2.75. I think the fact that the rat can't block is just dreadful. It's not good. It's not Wedding Announcement, right? It's just not that card. So yeah, 2.75, something like that. But still might never actually see real, the light of day in standard. Merfolk Coral Smith, not a great card. Let's give it a 1.25. I do like, one thing I want to say about this that I haven't mentioned yet is that you can sort of force it dying so you can scry. You can also pump it to where you can take out a relatively high toughness creature with it on blocks, and it's sure to die because it has almost no toughness at that point. So you're able to trade in combat and scry too. I think it's kind of okay in limited, but nowhere near standard at all. Merry Bards. Again, I like this art. I really like this art an awful lot, but I don't think that it's a very good card. So I'm just going to give this a 1.5. Minecart Daredevil, again, man, I do love a Donkey Kong reference, but the card's not great in standard, but it's also not completely terrible either. It really isn't. It's almost noteworthy. So I'm going to give it a 1.75. That's a very happy dwarf. Minstrosity up next. Again, just the joke is the best thing about this card. So But, you know, dies make a food token. Whatever. It's not terrible. So I'll just give it a 1.75 as well. Misleading moats. Not good, even at instant speed. So we're going to give this... Yeah, you see how much I hate this at 4 mana, but I don't mind it at 2? That's the difference. But at 4 mana and you don't get a giant fat whale attached to it, yeah, it's like a 1.25. Mocking Sprite. It looks good, but it's actually not as good as it looks in constructed. It's really not. 1.75. That's what I'm doing. I do think the flavor text is great. This is the first time I'm actually reading the flavor text. It's that's great. Moment of Valor is up next. The oh god, Valorous Stance. It's right there in the name of the card. The Valorous stands for extra mana, so it's not good. Even with the extra sort of modes and playability on this, 3 mana is not. You don't want to hold up 3 mana for this. So 1.75. Monstrous Rage. This is actually kind of good. The creature gets +3/+1 till end of turn at instant speed, and you put an enchantment into play. That's okay. You know, trample's good. It gets trampled too. Come on, man. So if there was just a spell that was like 1 mana for +3/+1 and trample, that might be good enough. Like an instant speed combat trick for mono red or something. But this is +3/+1 and trample, and they get to keep the +1/+1 and trample after the turn ends. I think that's actually really good, man. 2 1/4. 2 1/4. Fringe playable, just a mono red pump spell, right? So not amazing, but 2.5. It's really that territory, man. This is a very playable pump spell. Moonshaker Cavalry, the big commander card in the set. Maybe the commander card in the set. Now, I think if you can get to this in standard or just like reanimated, there might be a reason to do so. But if you're talking about reanimating a creature in standard, you've got options. Tally attracts more than that even. So I'm not sure this is exactly where you want to be. So I can't actually score it too high in standard. If this were a commander review, it'd be like a 4.5 or like 4 1/4 at least. But that's not really where we are. In the bar that we're in, this probably gets like a 2.5. As low as that sounds, again, remember 2.5 is still like somewhat fringe playable. So I'm actually being kind of nice to this card because I don't think it's going to see a ton of play in standard. So let's move on to Mosswood Dread Knight. I do like Mosswood Dread Knight. I think this isn't busted, obviously, but just the exact kind of creature I like. Draw a card, lose a life on the adventure hap is worth it. Even at sorcery speed, very much worth it. And a 2 mana 3/2 is just a good stat line. They throw on trample, it comes back. Just you gotta have some mana open to do the things, which is gonna suck. There are gonna be turns where this dies on like turn 3 and then turn 4. You have the option to either play this to the board again and draw your card and lose a life, or you can play your Shieldred, and you'll probably want to play your Shieldred more. But you want to set up your Shieldred with this, right? So now I have to like draw the card, lose a life, play Mosswood Dread Knight, or draw the card, lose a life, and hold up removal or something like that. And then play Shelly on the next turn, right? That way, every time I use this sorcery half of the card from then on out for the rest of the game, I'll actually be gaining a life if I have a Sheldred in play. So this is good with Sheldred, but I think it'll step on Sheldred's toes in terms of like how you want to use your mana on certain turns, right? But I feel like that was a little esoteric. I think it's a line that's going to come up a lot, but still a card you want to play. I think Golgari's looking somewhat strong in this new set, so I'm going to give this a 3 1/4. I think it's quite good. Probably the same thing I'd give Tenacious Underdog, a similar card. About a 3 1/4. Neva, Stalked by Nightmares. 1.75. I don't think the card's great. Knight of the Sweet's Revenge. I think this is better than it looks, man. I think 4 mana, all your foods tap for green. Probably going to almost or even exactly pay for itself on curve some of the time. That's sweet. Like it gives you a food. If you already have 3 foods in play, it pays for itself. It's not impossible. I think it's really good, dude. I think this is just way better than it looks. So I'm going to give this a 2.5. I am 100% serious. Some people are going to complain the 2.5 sounds low, and then a lot more people who know what the scores are about are going to complain the 2.5 sounds too high. But no, I'm serious. I'm serious. I think this card is actually kind of okay, dude. I really do. Not dead yet. It's actually a pretty sweet version of this effect. So I'm going to give this a 1.75. It's close. if there's a food deck, it'll be because of Knight of Sweet's Revenge. Exactly. That it is the like win condition in the food deck. Oh, Byra, oh my heart on fire. Oh, Byra, get that reference. This is actually pretty good. This is a pretty good fairy for the fairies deck. We need our fairies to be cheap to enable all those like fairy spells and stuff. And we need them to be effective once they hit the board. This does both of those things at a great rate. So this is good for the fairies deck and almost nothing else. But for the fairies deck, it's good. I'm going to give this a 2.75. This is good. This is good. Very good. Obira's Attendance. This isn't as good. This is not good at all, in fact. 1.25. Picklock Prankster. This is all right. This is all right, right? Not an embarrassing rate on the creature half. And you get kind of an impulsy thing on the instant speed adventure half. So altogether, not a bad little package. I'm going to give this a 2. Sure. I'm going to give this a 2. Picnic Ruiner, not Runner. Picnic Ruiner is the name of this card. It's not great. It looks like it might be okay, but it's actually kind of not. Adventure half costs way too much and all that. So I'm just going to give this a 1.5. Plunge into Winter. Better than it looks. 1.75. Still not super great, but interesting tempo. Scry draw is good too. So, it could be something. So 1.75. Pollen Shield Hair. Neat card, man. It gives you an intangible virtue on the one half. That's kind of good enough. So I'm going to give this card a 2.25. Something like that. Sure. Prophetic Prism. What do you give a Prophetic Prism? 1.5. Something like that. Protective Parents. The Batman card. If you read the flavor on this card, it's just Batman, it turns out. Is it Halloween? You're wearing a little fox costume and your parents died? And jeez Louise. What a sad card, man. But anyway, it's like a 1.25. It's not very good. Questing Druid. What a strong card just because of the adventure half. This is instant speed. Draw 2 cards, basically. Draw 2 the red way, but still. And then, oh yeah, by the way, there's also this guy. There's also Kyrion Dryad, just like stapled to it. But look at this. Look at this instant speed draw 2 over here. That's a good card. So I'm going to give this a 3.5. Is that all right? Is that weird? Is it weird that I'm doing that? 3.5. I think this card is actually kind of bonkers a little bit. Quick Study is up next. The Instant Speed Divination. Sure, 1.5. Again, look at this art. I like this art. Iris, you're doing a really good job with the sort of like old school fantasy art. It's like a sketch, like sketchbook art. It's really, really nice. I like it. It evokes the exact correct theme for Throne. We're for Eldraine. It's really nice. But anyway, Raging Battle Mouse, dude. Pikachu is pretty good. Honestly, this is a good card, man. Just a 2-mana 2/1, second spell each turn, ramp, and you're getting counters, or you're getting +1/+1. Like, I think this card is actually kind of swollen up. Like, this guy's, it's been working out. This looks good. This guy's terrified of him over here in the art. So is this guy, because they know what's up. Raichu comes into battle. You don't mess around. You're going to get thunderbolted. So I think this is a solid card, man. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's probably like a 3. This card's good. It really is. Rankle's Prank. This is choose 1 or more, but I still don't love it. I said it's not going to be the new Invoke Despair, but I said that in the spoiler video because, like, I'm not convinced it won't be. but I had a feeling that this is actually better than it looks, but I'm still just going to rate it like a 2.5. Something like that. 2.5 fish, something like that. Ratcatcher Trainee. This is all right, but not great. Mostly limited playable, 1.5. Rat Out. Mostly limited playable, 1.25, something like that. Yeah, you're going to catch a guy with it sometimes, though. Realm Scorcher Hellkite. Sweet card, but maybe a little bit overpriced, out of standard and all that. So I do think once you get it down, it's going to make some mana. That's a lot. 4 mana is a lot. It's so good. It's got this sweet mana sink. If you untap with it in play, you got a lot of mana to like ping stuff or just dome your opponent. So maybe. I think there's a maybe on this card. So I'm going to give it a 2.25. 2.5. Its card's a 2.5. This card is a 2.5 all day. A lot of adjusted scores tonight. Red Cap Thief. Terrible resolution. I'm sorry for that. But we're not going to be on it too long. It's worse than the Jewel Thief. It's not a very good card. We're going to give it a 1.75. Red Cap Gutter Dweller is up next. I keep saying it's a Siege Gang Commander. It's not a Siege Gang Commander. But it is a good way to end the game in your Rats deck. It is a somewhat good way to end the game in your Rats deck. But it doesn't like happen until the next turn or whatever. I just, I want it to be better than it is. I'm going to give it a 2.25. I want it to be better than it is. In 2005, this card would have been incredible. But it's not 2005. So we'll move on to Red Tooth Genealogist. 1.25. Red Tooth Vanguard is the 2-mana 3/1 trample that comes back from your graveyard too, but it's not Mosswood Dread Knight. This is not Death Knight. I've already forgotten the name of it. It's not as good, really. I'm going to give this a 1.75. Because it's actually, when you really get down to brass tacks, this card's not terrible, but 1.75. Regal Bunnicorn. I have talked a lot about how I don't love this, but really would like to. Again, in 2005, I would have been fooled by this. There's a dev in the past that would have been like, but no, not really anymore, man. You got to have like 4 non-land things out for this to be a 5/5, like 4 other non-land things out. I guess if you have 3 non-land things out, it's a 4/4. How hard is that? Not that hard, but then it's just vanilla guy. See, I keep wrestling with myself about this card. I think it might actually see play in like green-white tokens decks and stuff. So I don't bar it from seeing play, but I don't know if it's actually going to be even that good in those decks, or if those decks are going to be that good. So I'm going to give this, I'm going to be very charitable and give this a 2.5. I think it's right around there somewhere. Restless Bivouac, a creature land. This is a good creature land too, but not that impressive. I see people freaking out about it. I know it's really similar to a creature land that used to be good in Modern. But again, it's not 2000 whatever. So 2008. Wait. I'm messing up Fergie lines over here. What's happened to me? This card is a bit 2000 and late, is all I'm trying to say. But it's good. I mean, it's a creature land. You know, it's fine, regardless. The aggro decks, it gives like a post-sweeper option too. It's a good card. You will run it. But I'm still just going to give it like a 2.75, which is a good score. Most of these creature lands are going to get that. Like Restless Cottage, 2.75. Really good card. Maybe my favorite creature land in the set. Restless Fortress. Pretty decent card, actually. 2.75. Restless Spire. 2.75. 2.5. 2.75. Restless Vinestalk. 2.5. 2.75. These last two are somewhere in the range of 2.5 to 2.75. But these are all powerful cards that'll see play, whether or not they're just like a 1 or a 2 of, we'll have to wait and see. But these are obviously, they're creature lands. Come on, they're going to see some play. So, Return from the Wilds. I haven't talked about this card yet this spoiler season. I really wanted to, though. I just never really fit it into a video. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a sorcery. Choose 2. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle, or create a 1/1 white human creature token, or create a food token. You get 2 of these. So this is ramp. This is go search for a basic, put it on the battlefield, and make a guy. I think that's kind of good. It's not Topiary Stomper, but at least this guy can like immediately block, like that's not terrible. So I don't know, man. And like sometimes you get a food token instead. It's not bad. It's not a bad card. I'm going to give this a 2. This is a 2. So yeah. Let's go with Return Triumphant next. This is the 2 mana white reanimation spell that only reanimates small fries. We see these in every other set now, but this is one of the better ones we've seen. That said, still don't think it's amazing. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Rhyme for Reindeer. I love the concept of rhyme in Magic the Gathering. R-I-M-E. It's a magical substance, like a rune, a magical rune or ward that you put on things that blows up enchantments. It's been the flavor since like Ice Age. So I love whenever we get this like reference, but it's still not that great. It's okay, but it's not that great. We'll just give it a 1.5. Root Rider Fawn is next. It's a mana dork. That's all it does. We'll give it a 1.75. Rotisserie Elemental. Nowhere near as good as I want it to be, but what a weird elemental. What's there's a need for this elemental in nature. Huh. People get on to Pokemon. because they've run out of ideas or whatever. Like, oh, they're just going to turn a set of keys into a Pokemon. It's like, what is this? What do you think this is? They get points for originality for doing this, or is this the same as Klefki? Which is, you can't have it both ways, Mr. Gribble. So I'm just going to give this, a 2. I'm going to give this a 2. Sure. Literally gets hoisted on its own petard. Yes, it does. Hoisted on my own petard. It does. Look at it. It's kind of, well, I guess it's got a thing. It's got like a snake bird. What is this creature? I'm wasting time. Let's move on to Rowan, Scion of War. I like this more than Will, but I still don't actually like this very much, to be honest. I'm just going to give it a 2.2. The 2. Rowan's Grim Search is up next. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an instant with bargain. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. But if you bargain, you get to look at the top 4, put 2 back on top, the other 2 into your graveyard. This isn't like Hostile Negotiation or whatever that card was called, and that card fooled me. I still think that card is kind of good, but I think this card is kind of good. It costs 1 less than the card I'm currently referring to. 3 mana, instant speed, draw 2, lose 2 is already kind of good for black. Usually this would be sorcery speed or 4 mana, right? So this isn't bad. But I can't really give it the best score in the world. I'm just going to give it a solid 2. It's not terrible. Royal Treatment is up next. What a card. What a card this thing is right here. This is Blossoming Defense. But maybe better, I guess. Like, kind of. It's one of those. It's a Snakeskin Veil, but better. Definitely better than Snakeskin, right? Instant speed, and you get an enchantment in play, and the creature gets ward and hexproof till end of turn. +1/+1. Just, it seems so good, dude. I'm going to give this card a 3. Man, it's a role player, so it can't be like too high up there in terms of the score, but I will give it a 3. This is a very playable Magic card. Snakeskin Veil was. This is. Ruby, Daring Tracker. I like this card a lot, man. I like a mana dork for 2 mana that has haste. I think that's actually really good. So I'm going to give this a 3. Am I really going to do that? Yeah. I honestly, I'm sorry for the harsh yeah there, but I think that a mana dork with haste is very good. Very good. So I'm giving it a 3. Savior of the Sleeping. This is not good. I love this art, though. I really do. It's good looking art. Good job, Valera. Look, Philina. But this is a bad card. It's not. I want it to be good. I like this line of text a good bit. I really do. But you probably can't really finagle this to actually be very good in standard. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. It's neat. Scalding Viper. Ooh, it's a good card. It's not Brazen Borrower. This half of it is a sorcery. But it's still, bounce anything. It's pretty good. The Viper half is all right, though. The Viper half is probably going to deal a few damage a game to them. So just all in all, a really solid card. I'm going to give this a 3.25. I do think the sorcery speed does hurt it. It's not Brazen Borrower, right? The instant speed was so important on that card, but still more than solid the way this one's designed. Scarecrow Guide. I think this card's great. I think this card, the flavor text is kind of funny as well. But ultimately, it's not a very good card. So I'm just going to give this a 1.5. 1.25. It's a 1.25. Scream Puff, another 1.25 if I've ever seen one. This is just way too much mana. It just is. Sentinel of Lost Lore. I haven't really talked about this card much this season either. That is a look. He is serving a look. It's 3 mana, 1 and 2 green for a 3/4 Elf Knight. When it ETBs, choose 1 or more. You can choose all of these if you want to. Return target card you own in exile that has an adventure to your hand. Put target card you don't own in exile that has an adventure on the bottom of its owner's library, or exile target player's graveyard. So if you get all 3 of these, you're doing well, but I'm still not sure this is really standard playable, even with this last mode that's kind of a catch-all. Like if you're not playing with or against adventures, here's this. This feels card advantage-y in an adventures deck, right? But it's not really card advantage-y. It kind of is, but not really. Sort of, kind of. I guess it more is than isn't. Because you get to cast the adventure again, right? And that's good. But I still don't think it's that pushed. I don't. There was a time where a 3 mana 3/4 would just be like a good enough stat line to be worthy of consideration. But again, a theme tonight, not 2005. It's not even 2012. Like in 2012, it was somewhat, a decent stat line. But, just not really doing that anymore. So I want to like this, and it does an awful lot. It's super versatile. It may be sideboardable, so I'm going to give it a 2.5, something like that. Shirai of Numbing Depths. You know, here's the deal. 4 mana, 2/3 is not good, but you're stunning a creature on ETB, and you're drawing a card on ETB, potentially drawing multiple cards over the course of the game. I don't think this is actually standard playable, but I'm still going to give it a 2. I'm still giving this card a 2. Shatter the Oath is up next. This destroys an enchantment in black. It costs 5 mana to do it, but it destroys an enchantment in black, so it's worth noting. Still, though, it's not good, so 1.25. Shrouded Shepherd is really neat, like a mini sweeper on the adventure half for only 2 mana. And then, on the other half, you kind of get a neat ETB trigger in your aggro deck. An embarrassing creature, just 2 mana, 2/2 vanilla. That's not good, but a cool ETB and a cool adventure, man. I'm going to give this like a 2.25. It might even be better than that. Sideboardable against certain decks. Very good. Skewer Slinger up next. Not actually very good, to be honest with you. Maybe limited playable as a 23rd creature. We'll give it a 1.25. Sky Beast Tracker is up next. This is also not great, although it's a source of food generation. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, you get a food. So I guess it's a giant spider with a sweet line of text, but even then I'm not super in love with it, so we'll just give it a 1.5. Sleep Curse Fairy. This is the 1 mana 3/3 flying ward 2, but you got to wait. You just got to wait on it a few turns, and then it untaps. It's kind of neat. I like the flavor here and all that. I think this card is probably a 2.75. If nothing else, while it's tapped down, while it's asleep, you know, it enables like the Thoughtseize and the -3/3, the Nameless Inversion for fairies. So it does enable some of these fairy cards, and I think that's somewhat important to remember. So I think 2.75 is like close. Maybe a 2.5 is closer to it, but I'm going to say 2.75. I think it enables and then does a lot of work in the mid and late game. Sleight of Hand. What do you give Sleight of Hand in a format where Consider is kind of already an option, you know? I say Sleight of Hand is a 2.25. Throughout Magic history, about a 2.25, sure. Slumbering Keep card, great looking card. The more I think about this card, the more I like it. Just a single mana to get started, just a really early investment, turn 1, and now you got the Scry 1 whenever an enchantment comes into play. That's really good. It's not a cast either. It enters the battlefield. That's really, really relevant. And then this ability that's going to make it a 5/5 pretty easily. So, this seems okay. There's probably a fun little deck that we're going to try to do on stream with Agatha's Cauldron, right? Where like you exile a Slumbering Keep card with Agatha's Cauldron, you have a bunch of enchantments in play, and now like all your guys with +1/+1 counters have this activated ability, right? So you can just like pay 1 billion mana and give like 3 different guys +1/+1 for each enchantment. We're going to make this work. Something like that. But even in decent decks, even in actually good decks, this is great. And obviously I think this sees play in every commander enchantments deck for till the end of time. But even not that format notwithstanding and not having any bearing on this score, I'm going to give this card a 2.75. I really am. I think this card is very good. Snare Master Sprite is up next. This card is not as good, but it's kind of okay. Again, this satisfies all the, it's a 1 mana fairy. And some fairy decks are just going to want to play that, so. But I'm just going to give this a 1.5. It's not amazing. Solitary Sanctuary up next. This is okay. It's just okay. It's limited playable in the Hilda deck, but outside of that, not amazing. If you are tapping down a bunch of their guys, this can be a neat line of text. The +1/+1 counter whenever you tap down one of your opponent's creatures, but altogether, it's a little narrow. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Song of Totentance. This is the rat fireball right here. This is kind of neat, man. And I think it's sleepery just a little bit. It's pretty easy to write this thing off, but in terms of like, it's not every day that you see just put X guys into play. It's not every day you see that. The fact they have haste is really good. It's creatures you control gain haste too. That might be relevant again if you have like planeswalkers that are making tokens. So I kind of don't hate this card. Not at all. I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think that there are setups where this does an awful lot of work. Especially if you do have like impact trimmers and stuff like that. Like this could do a thing. It could. Soul Guide Lantern. What do you give a Soul Guide Lantern? A 2. You give Soul Guide Lantern a 2. That's about what it is. Spectre of Mortality. Massacre Girl, but not Massacre Girl in this set. This is a good card, though. I honestly do think this is quite a good card. The one piece of tension I have with this is that you want it to be like kind of a one-sided wrath, not really affect your guys as much as possible. But you do have to play creatures in your deck for him to work. So it's somewhat likely that he's going to come down and kill some of your own guys. Because you have to play creatures in your deck. You have to exile a creature from your graveyard. So if it was from a graveyard, I think this card would be much better. And its sort of deck building applications wouldn't be as restricted. But all that said, I'm still going to give this a 2.5. I think it's right around there somewhere. Not busted, somewhat standard playable. Probably sideboardable against aggro if Reanimator wants to do that. I think it's a road they could go down. So that's probably most of where we'd see it, but it could be a strong main deck card, especially in best of one. Well, we'll see. Spellbook Vendor up next, the fakest Luminarch Aspirant I've ever seen. I do like books, though. I don't like having to pay for this ability. I really don't like having to pay for this ability. So I'm just going to give this like a 2.5. I think this is actually worse than it looks, all things considered. But still without being bad. Spellscorn Coven. Man, Coven looks good to me, dude. Coven looks really good to me. This has an Enter the Battlefield trigger on it. And a really good adventure, like Divide by Zero, kind of. I think this card is actually quite good. Like, very? What up? Oh, is Power Dragon in here? What's up, Power Dragon? What's going on, dude? Oh, win with the 500 bits. I haven't seen that yet either. I will take time out of the speed run to point out your 500 bits. That's a lot of bits, dude. I need that. Hey, everybody. Just say that for now. So back to the speed run. This card, I think, is actually intensely good. I'm gonna go there. I think this card is a 3.25. Which is the highest score that I've dealt out in a while. This card is sneaky good. I like this card a lot. We'll move on to Spell Stutter, a nice reference. And a good card, It's just like a make disappear, whatever, something like that. With upside. In the Fairies deck, it's quite good, right? So I will just give this a 2.25. I think that's what these, counter unless they pay 2 spells, something like that. Spider Food up next. Actually a pretty good version of this effect, considering it just also gives you a free food token. These can be playable and sealed, like in the main deck. But I'm still just going to give it a 1.5. Spiteful Hex Mage. This guy's neat, He's kind of neat a little bit, but I don't think that he's great, to be honest. I think that he's cool, but not great. And even if he was, like super playable, he still wouldn't be broken. I don't think this card's busted, so I'm just going to give him like a 2.5, something like that. Splashy Spellcaster, not great. 1.5. Stingblade Assassin, not great, but it is one of these in limited. When it enters the battlefield, bust up a creature that was already dealt damage. So these can be kind of cool in that environment, but we're not really talking about limited, so I'm just going to give it a 1.5. Stockpiling Celebrant. This is... I like this card just in terms of the flavor and all that, but I don't think that it's a very good card. So I'm just going to give it a 1.5 as well, like somewhat outer playable and limited, but never standard. Stone Splitter Bolt. This is not good. This just isn't good. I had people try to tell me it was. If it could go face, it'd be good, but it can't, so it's bad. 1.5. Stormkelb Prowler. 2 mana for a 2/1. Cast a 5 mana spell or more. It gets +2, +2, +1/+1 counters. So it will immediately become a 4/3 when you cast a 5-drop. Not good, though. Kind of neat, but not very good. Let's give it a 1.5. Stormkelb Vanguard. This is okay. I'm going to give this a 1.75. The sorcery speed isn't great, but destroy an artifact or enchantment kind of is. So I'll give it a 1.75. Stroke of Midnight. Bust up any non-land permanent. All they get is this lousy 1/1. Let's give that a 2.5. Solid removal spell, definitely. Succumb to the Cold. It's instant speed. It's good tempo when you think about it, but still not actually playable. Let's give it a 1.75. Sugar Rush. Sugar. This card's fine as a pump spell. It's in the wrong color. It really is, but this gets the gears turning. It makes me want to build that like mono black aggro deck with a bunch of 1 and 2 drops, Looks kind of great in there, so I'm actually going to give this card a 2. I like it. Sweet Tooth Witch. Not great, to be honest. I do like that you're converting food into loss of life rather than gaining life. I think it's interesting. It might go in like food commander decks, but in standard, the effect is probably too slow, even though it does give you, I like that it gives you a way to sacrifice food for life. That's good in a way, but still probably not fast enough, not good enough. So, but maybe I'm wrong. 1.75. I was all ready to give this a 1.5. 1.75. Sir Armont the Redeemer, a step too slow at 5 mana for standard, but kind of neat. I'm going to give this a 2. Sure. Sir Ginger the Meal Ender. Baby, if they have a Planeswalker, this thing is broken. It's unbelievably good if they have a Walker. If they don't, it's still a 2 mana 3/1 with more upside. Whenever an egg breaks, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and you scry 1. It's super playable little 2 mana 3/1 for any deck right here. And again, if they have a Walker, it's just off the charts. I'm going to give Ginger Spice a 2.75. Almost a 3. I am super close to giving this a 3. We are almost there. Taken by Nightmares is not very good, even at instant speed. I am super sorry, but let's just give this a 1.6. Something like that. Talion's Messenger. Walmart Raffine, but still in the Fairies deck, it's still like okay, so I'll give it a 2.5. I will, 2.25. We'll go 2.25. Talion herself, the kindly lord. I've kind of cooled on this a little bit. I do still think that this ability will trigger a good bit, but I just can't love it. I do not love this. You know what I mean? So I want to pretty badly, but there's already a Dimir control deck in standard that's actually pretty good. Very good. Last I checked the meta, it was pretty high up there. And I don't know if they want this. I really don't. So it's really hard to say, man. But a good-looking card in a vacuum, I'd have to give it a 2.5 or 2.75 even. So I'm going to stick with that. 2.6. I'm cheating. Let's go to 2.75. Let's go to 2.75. I think it's a fine card. Tangled Colony. This is another one I kind of want to like more than I do. A 2 mana 3/2 is fine, but it can't block. When it does die, it splits. So it's great in Aristocrats. It's not even Aristocats as a movie. But yeah, Aristocrats. This is pretty good, and gotta hit that rats pretty hard. I think it's fine there. So I'm gonna give this a 2.5, but it may deserve more than that. I don't think it deserves any less though. Tanglespan Lookout. This is the thing whenever you play an aura, draw a card. Or whenever an aura comes into play, you draw a card. That's fine. Commander playable, but a little slow in standard at the rate, so I'm just going to give this a 2. Sure. Tattered Ratter. It's just a good name for a card and nothing else. I mean, I guess this is fine when your dudes get blocked, but I don't think this goes in the standard Rats deck, just a limited Rats deck. I might be wrong, but at some point you can only play so many non-rat dudes in your rat deck, right? So you got to be choosy with those slots. I'm not sure that Santa Claus over here quite makes it, but well, maybe. It's still though. 1.75. Tempest Heart. I like this guy. I like the adventure mode on him, which is basically just faithless looting in blue at 2 mana and instant speed. That's not bad. It's really not. And you get a 3/4 trample that can get bigger too on the creature half. Like altogether, this card seems relatively strong. So I'm gonna give her a 2.5. I really am. That's a good score. In case you're wondering. I'm wondering if it's too good of a score, but yeah, I'm going to give it a 2.5. I think it's good. Tenacious Tome Seeker. This, a Shipwrecked Dowser or an Archaeomancer that costs 1 less, but you bargain it. I think it's good. I think it's actually kind of sneakily good. 2.25 on this. Territorial Witch Stalker is not great. Limited playable boy, but a good boy, so 1.5. Apprentice's Folly. Could be great. Really could just be an actually broken Magic card. So I'm going to give this 2.75. That leaves it room to grow. I want to give it a 3, but I don't think it's quite there. But this could, when we reevaluate the set, whenever it rotates out, this could have gone up to a 3.5 for all I know. It does have a lot of potential. This card has tons of potential. So just keep an eye on it, dude. I think it's one of the sneakily best cards in the set. And the price does not reflect that either. The price is actually really low on pre-order right now. I'm surprised because I think this is actually a pretty good card. The End is next. Not quite the end for the review, but but it is the card, The End. This is okay. This is okay. Even at 4 mana, it's pretty decent. You know, like exile their Shieldred and get rid of every single copy of it forever. Planeswalkers it works that way with too. So I think this is like one-ofable in some mono black list or like black blue control or whatever. I think this is probably okay. So I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think that it's, 2.5 because it is a little expensive. It is a little expensive, but I do think again that it's playable. It's main deck playable, especially in best of one. So yeah. I don't like that you already have to, like, let's say I want to target an Atraxa or an Atali. Very important creatures in Standard. They have to already have played the thing and gotten value off of it. I don't like that. But I do think that there are just enough super important creatures at or around this mana cost in Standard to blow up and just, deny them access to for the rest of the game. And that's like really important. That the card's good. So I'm going to stick with 2.75. I think it's close to that. The Goose Mother. This one also scales really well. It's not Hydroid Krasis or anything, but I think it's pretty good, man. I do. It has to attack to draw cards, which I don't love. But I do love that it can come down as like a 6/6 flyer in the late game or a 4/4 flyer even. It's not terrible, But you have to wait a turn for it to attack if it doesn't have haste. You can't give it haste, But even if it dies, I guess you get, 2 food tokens on average, something like that. So, it's probably all right, but I'm just not really sure what deck is going to play this. There's kind of a Simic beatdown deck. It's kind of beat down ramp thing, but I don't know how good that deck actually is. I keep saying about these decks, they have to overcome some pretty busted decks to be any good, but this is a sweet mid to late game piece that flies over for a bunch, keeps your hand stocked up, and keeps your life total sort of stable. So it is a decent card. It's a fake Krasis, but even fake Krasis is okay, So I'm going to give this a 2.75. I think we're getting really close here. The Huntsman's Redemption. This is all right. A 3-mana 3/3 that does more stuff and potentially even tutors for like the best creature in your deck. So again, just not a bad card. I'm going to give this a 2.25. The Iron Crag. Let's give this 2-mana rock that's standard playable and has upside a 3. Solid 3. I think it's right there. It really should be a 2.75 because, it's still a rock. It's kind of bland, but I'm going to give it an honorary 3 because we haven't seen a 2-mana rock that's unconditional and any deck can play it. And it's not like some sort of gimmicky creature type thing. Like we haven't seen one of those in a long time, so I'm giving it a 3. The Princess Takes Flight, an interesting, uncommon saga here that's meant to be bargained away, but even if you don't bargain it away, you can just like target one of your own guys and then get back an ETB trigger a couple of turns later. Even if you don't do that, this is kind of a soul partition that just waits a couple of turns and then returns the creature, suspends it for a couple of turns. So certain tempo decks might like that. The middle mode I haven't talked about yet, but is actually pretty good for punching through damage. I like a lot about this card. So I'm going to give this a 2. I don't really want to give it more. I will give it 2.25. I will give it 2.25. Exile a creature is very powerful. It just is. And an enchantment came into play. It's a saga. You can bargain it, whatever. There's a lot of play this card has on it. So 2.25. The Witch's Vanity. I like this one a little bit too, not quite as much as Princess Takes Flight, but it's a relatively low investment. It's a removal spell, then a food token. That's not bad. It also gives you a wicked roll too, but removal spell food token for 2 mana is, you at least look at it, but I don't think it's great. 2. This is a 2. Threadbind Click. Huh. Oh, Threadbind Click. Threadbind Click. This is a good card. There were people in the comments section of the spoiler video telling me I was just nuts. I'm crazy. What am I talking about? This is not a good card. It's not comparable to Brazen Borrower. I think I'm sticking to it, man. I'm really sticking to it. I think that this card is phenomenal. Not incredible. I won't say that it's busted. I won't say that it's broken. It might not even be, Brazen Borrower good. And I think you can make the argument that Borrower wasn't like busted. It was annoying, but it wasn't busted. But this is a removal spell. This is a straight up instant speed, unconditional almost removal spell. Any attacking creature effectively, or any guy they have to tap for activated abilities, that's pretty good. This kills everything the Wandering Emperor kills. That's a lot of guys, Stapled to a Phantom Monster, a 4-mana 3/3 flyer. I think it's actually pretty good, man. I really do. And yeah, blue-white can tap stuff, you know. I have to stick to it, man. I'm going to give this card a 3. And that's going to be a lot to some people, but I really think that this card might be the truth. It's very likely the card that I'm most wrong about this season, if I'm wrong about a bunch of cards. But there's something about it, dude. It's an instant speed removal spell for a not embarrassing cost on the one half, and then a 3/3 flyer on the other half. Like this card is standard playable, and it's probably not worth a 3, but I'm giving it a 3. I'm doing it. 3 blind mice. I like this a lot, actually. The more I think about it, it doesn't have to copy the 1/1 white mouse creature tokens. It can copy other tokens. If you get it late in the game, it copies like the double striking tokens from the 6 mana Eternal Wanderer. You know, that it copies the 2/2 Vigilance guys from the Wandering Emperor. That's pretty good too. It copies all kinds of tokens, man. You can make that work for you. But even if it's just copying mice, like it still makes 3 1/1s. And that's not terrible. Like in these decks, they're just trying to protect, you know, mid and late game planeswalkers. This looks okay, you know, right alongside Wedding Announcement. Maybe it's copies 5 and 6 or 5 through 8 of Wedding Announcement, depending on what you're doing. I just like it. I really do like this card. I'm going to give this a 3 as well. You know, I would give Wedding Announcement like a 3.5. So this getting a 3, that's about right. I really think so. Now, if they blow up the token and you got nothing to copy, these modes suck. So do keep that in mind. I think that's a massive disadvantage for the card. But that's why it's a whole half a point lower. 3 bowls of porridge. Best flavor in the set, perhaps. And it's funny that flavor, do you get it? The food has good flavor. But yeah, one of them's too hot, it does 2 damage. One of them's too cold, so it taps. The other one's just right, so you gain life. It's very, very cute. But it's not really a standard playable card, I don't think. So I'm probably just going to give this a 1.75. Thunderous Debut could be standard playable. You know, the question is, do you want to ramp to 7 mana for a Traxa or a Tally? Do you ramp to 8 for this? You know, I think it might be worth doing Tooth and Nail here. I really do. A poor excuse for a Tooth and Nail, but still a Tooth and Nail. For all intents and purposes. I like it. I do. So I'm going to give this a 2.75. Maybe even a 3. 2.75. Do that. Titanic Growth has existed before. What do you give a Titanic Growth? 1.5. Toadstool Admirer. I like this guy, man. I'm going to give him a 2 on principle because he's kind of a bogle for the first few turns of the game. I like that about him. Torch the Tower. This is kind of okay, I guess, but not any better than a lot of options that we kind of already have in standard. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Totentance, the Swarm Piper. This is fine, dude, but only fine. It's only fine. I do like the death trigger on it. That's cool, but it's a little bit much to get into play for its, stats and the fact that this mana sink is kind of pricey for what it does. So all that kind of added up, I'm just going to give this like a 2.25, but that's still pretty good. I like a dice trigger. You know me. Tough Cookie is up next. This is a lot for a 2-mana 2/2. Yeah, you get a food token and you can make them 4/4s and you can sack it because it's a food for 3. It's not bad, but it's also not great. I'm just going to give this a 2. Solid 2. Troublemaker Oofy. This can blow up artifacts or enchantments when you bargain it, but still just kind of fine. I'll give it a 2. Troyan Gutsy Explorer. A little bit of ramp here, and we've got stuff kind of similar to this in the format already that doesn't see a lot of play, but I still like, Like there are a few cards like this that I kind of like. And this loots if you don't need the mana, so whatever. I'll give it a 2. Right at a 2. Twin Veil Guide. This is not a good card. This is just a lot. This is a limited card, so 1.25. Twine and Twins. This is also pretty sick. I mean, a 4-mana 4/4 flying, Vigilance, Ward 1. That's a lot of different abilities on a 4/4 flyer. Or a 4-mana 4/4 rather. And then it's got like a normal like blink spell on it too. That's just all very good in my eyes. It very much is. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out a 2.75 on this card. I think it's good. Twisted Fealty, just the threaten effect of the set, but it's at 3 mana rather than 4, and you get a Wicked Roll token. Wicked Roll. I said Wicked Roll. A Wicked Roll. It's not terrible, but still just threaten at the end of the day, so I'll give it a 2. Twisted Sewer Witch. This is a great limited, like, in-game spell, sort of, for your Rats deck. But I might actually play this in the standard Rats deck. I might actually do this, because it's kind of Blood Artist-y, slightly. You know, you get a Wicked roll for all your Rats. It could be a lot of Rats. So I think it's neat, but very niche and extremely expensive for what you're doing. So I'll just give it a 2.25, which is a quarter point more than I want to give it, to be honest. You know? The Two-Headed Hunter. Yo, Watsy, put out bowls that look like chicken. I'd buy it. Yeah, those are bowls of porridge. One of them that looks like a chicken. I would also buy said bowls. I think my grandmother has a candy dish that looks like that. It's like a chicken, like a porcelain chicken. Anyway, Two-Headed Hunter is up next. A 5-mana 5/4 Menace. We'll talk about that stat line again in a second. And then has twice the rage. This is just a creature gains double strike till end of turn at instant speed for 2 mana, which is the going rate anyway. That's how much it costs to play that spell, like a Temur Battle Rage or something. But this also is a 5-mana 5-power creature, so it takes out not Haughty Djinn, because it doesn't have reach, but it does take out Tolarian Terror, Sheldred, and other 5 toughness stuff. So that I kind of like. This isn't terrible. It's really not terrible. I'm going to give this card a 2.25. 2.25. No, we're not. We're going to give this card a 2.5. This card gets a 2.5. That's where it sits. Unassuming Sage is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2. When it ETBs, you can pay 2. If you do, you get a sorcerer roll token attached to it. It's bad. It's limited playable. 1.25. Unruly Catapult, the Thermo Alchemist of the set, so you know I gotta like it. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of principle, but it's probably a 1.75. But I like it enough. I add a quarter point. Up the Beanstalk. Neat thing here. This is the 2 mana enchantment that when it ETBs, you draw a card. But whenever you cast a thing with mana value 5 or greater, you draw a card for that too. Really sweet in Commander and potentially okay in standard decks that are very narrow, you know. I want to play enchantments early in the game that don't ramp me, but I also want a bunch of 5 and 6 drops. Again, extremely narrow applications, but good in the decks that do want it. It's a great bargain target some of the time. So I'll just throw it a 2.25, something like that. Vantress Transmuter. I shouldn't. I should give it a 2. What's the difference between this and Prophetic Prism? Not every deck can play Prophetic Prism. It's like worse than Prism in some ways, right? So I don't know. I think people are hyping it up a little much. Vantress Transmuter up next. This is just, it's bad. It's not very good. It does have a removal half on it. So it's like relatively okay and limited, but altogether the card's kind of boring, even with the removal half. But I guess you could argue that this specific removal half often costs 2 mana anyway, so it's just strictly better than a lot of the options we already have. That said, I'm just going to give this like a 1.75, something like that. Verdant Outrider up next. This is not a good card. It's not really worth talking about. Let's give it a 1.25. Virtue. Oh, we're on the virtues. That means we're kind of close now, guys. Virtue of Courage is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red. It deals 2 damage to any target at instant speed for 2 mana. But as an enchantment, it lets you draw a bunch of cards whenever you deal burn to your opponent effectively. I think this card is quite good. The more I think about it, the better I think it is. I think that you will get to 5 mana more often than you think, especially in certain big red decks and burn decks and stuff. I have seen the point that in a format with Sheldred, you just shouldn't be playing burn. And that does make a great deal of sense. But I think that they've given us in a few recent sets and now in this set, they gave us another piece that kills Sheldred really easily. So I think we might have the tools to combat Shelly enough that we might be able to make burn work. And this is obviously a very important over-the-top card in burn, but I think it's playable in older formats to an extent as well. It's obviously a great commander card, but I mean like historic, pioneer mostly. I think this is quite playable. So I like this card, if you can't tell. I'm going to give it a 3.5. Yeah, I think it's about a 3.5. I think this is actually a very good Magic card. Virtue of Knowledge. This isn't as good in Standard, I don't think. I know it's Panharmonicon, but it's a 5 mana Panharmonicon that you have to be in a certain thing to play. You have to untap with it on the table to start getting real advantage from it and all that. It does have an adventure mode, and I do like that, but it's a tricky adventure mode too. That costs mana as well. So I think that the instant half is really interesting. I will say that. There's a lot of triggered abilities that are very worth copying, I think, even in Standard, right? A sort of restricted format like Standard. However, I'm just going to give this, remember, 60 card constructed environments is what we're judging here. I'm going to give this a 2.75. That's what I'm going to do. Again, I think in casual, commander and stuff, brawl, whatever, historic brawl, this is probably a card that's going to get built around a lot, but I don't know how much you're going to see it on the competitive scene in Magic in Standard. But we'll, hopefully I'm wrong. Virtue of Loyalty. I think this is quite good. The instant half isn't an embarrassing card. It's just a fine card. And it has some effect on the table the turn it comes into play. Rings of Brighthearth in the background for some reason. Maybe it's the Circle of Loyalty, and now there's two of them. It looks like Rings of Brighthearth, but anyway, it's a solid card, man. I think that it's possible mono-white aggro or blue-white soldiers or whatever just has more options than this, better options. But I do think this will help them win long slogs in ways that they weren't able to before. This is a dimension they didn't really have, and I think they'll be okay paying 5 mana for it. They don't get a soldier off of it. They don't get a human off of it. And the big mono white decks right now are humans decks and soldiers decks. So that might present kind of an issue. But in terms of being like a late game, I win button, especially for an aggro deck that's going to get like 4 power a turn off of this thing. Beat this, outrun this, I think that's actually really good. So I'm going to give this a 3.25. I don't think the adventure mode is quite as good, although it's still pretty decent. I will say, if you want to kill a two toughness guy, you just flash this dude in and block. That's one thing you can do, but I don't know that the adventure mode is quite as good. I like a burn spell slightly more, but this is still a body. But the enchantment half, you could argue, is even better, because all it really wants is for you to have creatures out. The red one wants you to like cast burn spells and stuff. You have to have spells in your hand. They have to be the right kind of spells. You have to untap with it and play. This does a thing the turn it comes into play, and all it wants you to do is play creatures and already have them in play, which isn't hard. So I really should give this a 3.5 as well. I should at least give it the same score. This is a good card. Virtue of Persistence here. This is 7 mana, 5 and 2 black for an enchantment. Now, the sorcery half of it is only 2 mana. A target creature gets -3/-3 till end of turn, you gain 2 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, the enchantment half, at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. A graveyard to the battlefield. Your control, babies. That's good. It's a Phyrexian portal. But instead of 9 mana and they sack 3 guys, you get the removal half like up front. You get the 3/3, the -3/-3 up front for only 2 mana. And then later you get this ridiculous spell that you may never cast, but that's fine because the sorcery speed removal half is okay. It's not great. But against aggro, I actually think that you won't mind casting it at sorcery speed so much. And not only that, 2 life. That 2 life is better than you think, dude. 2 life mattered all the time on Vraska's Contempt. And I think 2 life is going to matter a lot more than you think on this card too, against those mono red decks, those mono white decks. So I actually think the 2 life is very, very of note on this card. Removal spells that also gain life tend to be all right, is all I'm saying. But obviously, if you ever do get to the point in the game where it's gone long enough, you can cast this spell. You do have to untap with it in play. You have to wait a turn to use it. But that's still an undeniably powerful line of text. I think they balance these pretty well with one another. I'm going to give this a 3.5 too, just because I think the removal spell is really good, even at sorcery speed. Virtue of Strength. Up next. This is the worst one in my eyes, but still pretty good. I think this might be one of the better ones in Commander, though. 7 mana, obviously 5 and 2 green for an enchantment. If you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times that much mana instead. It also has Garenbrig Growth, just a single green mana for a sorcery. Return target creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. A nice little regrow ability for only a single mana, which is my favorite part of the card. The fact that you have to tap a basic land, a little bit lame. They could have, for 7 mana, I don't know why it says basic lands, but mono green will obviously love a card like this. And even, green X, 2-color decks. Ossification. Ossification gets played all the time in 2-color decks. Orzhov deck in Standard plays Ossification. There's an Esper deck in Standard that plays Ossification because it plays like 6 basics, which isn't enough for Ossification, but they still sometimes play a 2 of Ossification. And if Ossification can exist in like 2-color decks, I think this card can. So, I don't know, I like it, but I'm going to give this one a 3.25. Really a 3. I'm just going to give this one a 3 for competitive play. Not the lowest. The lowest for competitive play so far, I think, has been the blue one at 2.75. Even that one has some tricky applications for its adventure half that I think might be relevant. This, though, just the single mana for the regrow effect, I really like. And again, there are certain decks in Standard take advantage of it. So I'll give this a 3. Voracious Vermin. I gotta take a sip. My God. Oh, water. Okay. Voracious Vermin. This is not great. It's just 3 mana 2/1 that makes one of them rats when it comes into play. But it also is an unruly mob. Rats don't have to die. It's just whenever another creature you control dies, it gets a counter. That's a pretty good mode, dude. Like that's not terrible. But at 3 mana, it'll do nothing. Maybe Pauper, but very likely not Pauper because unruly mob doesn't even play Pauper. So why would this? It does create the extra body, but I still can't really see myself supporting this card too much. So I'm just going to give this like a 1.5. Warehouse Tabby, another one of those enchantment goes to the graveyard, do a thing. Only this time, instead of getting like a 1/1 flyer like you did on the white 3 mana guy, you get a 1/1 black rat that can't block, one of those. You can also pay 2 mana and have Tabby gain Death Touch till end of turn. I don't love the art on this card. I don't. I mean, it's funny and all that, but still, poor guy. Poor little, he's just doing his job. It's nature. It's the circle of life. It's what he's intended to do biologically. He's just killing this rat. It's what he's got to eat. It's his job. He's obviously in the basement of a building. He's in a warehouse somewhere. So it is his job. He's enlisted to kill rats. And this is what's going to happen. I don't know, man. It's just, all I'm saying, he's a poor little cat. But I've really wasted a lot of time on the description of the art, but I do think this is a sweet card. Just a single mana to get started on this. There is a neat little enchantments go to the graveyard deck, Wicked Roll token thing in Standard that I'm going to try to build. Maybe it's part of an Arietti deck. We'll see another card in just a second that's sort of a centerpiece in that deck. But I really like the idea of this like Orzhov sack enchantments, aristocrat enchantments deck. That's kind of cooking up right now. And it might just be like a limited archetype, but I want to know if it makes the jump to Standard because a card like this is actually pretty attractive. 1 mana investment for this, and this is, again, Pauper playable, and I think it might actually be worth pointing out on a card that only costs 1 mana to get started on. But move on to Water Wings. This card's boring. It's just a boring card. 1.25. It's not good. Welcome to Sweet Tooth is actually kind of a pretty interesting card. For only 2 mana, you get a guy and a food token. And on the end, you get a bunch of power, potentially. This is kind of like, it reminds me of like Michiko's Reign of Truth on the 3rd mode, but for food decks. So I think it's kind of neat in those decks and not a whole lot else. It does give you a lot of resources, an enchantment, a token, and a food. All that's good. With a halfway decent last mode in the right deck. But I'm just going to give this like a 1.75. Almost a 2. We're verging on 2, but not quite. Werefox Bodyguard. Werefox Bodyguard. This is the best Fiend Hunter ever printed. This is the one. This is Fiend Hunter, Banisher Priest, Brutal Cathar, Skyclave Apparition, Annex Sentry. All those guys. I think this is the best that they've ever printed. Now, it is a little bit harder to cast at 2 white pips. But that really doesn't detract from the fact that it has freaking flash. You can also sack it for 2 life if it's going to die anyway. These creatures are often targets for removal and stuff. So you cash it in for 2 life if it's going to die, or you cash it in and bring one of your guys back and repeat that ETB trigger. You can save one of your guys with it because it has flash. You can respond to a removal spell with this and save one of your guys. And then later block with the Bodyguard, take a creature out of combat, sack it, gain 2 life, pop back in with an ETB trigger. So many things to do with this, but if all you're really using it as is a flash removal spell on a body, I think it's just good enough there. I'm giving this card a 3.25. This is an incredibly good Magic card. Super good Magic card here. One of the better in the set. 3.25 easy. Wicked Visitor. This is the last thing I believe that cares when enchantments go to the graveyard, but this is a Blood Artist. Each opponent loses 1 life whenever an enchantment you control goes to the bin. So I'm going to like this card. Again, I think there might be a deck that uses it. I have never noticed this creepy lady in the door. Do you see this creepy lady in the door? That's neat. But anyway, I guess. Sweet card. Just a very, very, very sweet card here. Is it the Boogeyman? Is it because it's like a sleep thing? Amalgamations of many childhood nightmares stalk the realm of dreams, feeding on the collective terror of all those trapped in the wicked slumber. So really, just amalgamations of different people's nightmares come together That's kind of neat. That's what cool flavor too. So I guess we got to stack that on. This is pauper playable as well. Need to point that out. I think it might be important really, because the Blood Artist for this effect is just something you want to pay attention to. I'm going to give this card a 2.5. I'd really like to score it higher than that, but it's probably, come on, it's probably not. If I had to score Blood Artist, I would give that card a 3. So 2.5 here. Enchantments are less plentiful than creatures and a lot harder to get into the graveyard. So got to do some work. We'll see if it's worth it. Will, Scion of Peace. This is, I don't love this one. You know, I guess it's a life gain payoff that should have life gain. It seems like early in development, this had vigilance and life gain. Lifelink. But they took lifelink off of it. I'm almost sure they did that. If the card had lifelink, we'd be talking because it would kind of like help itself out, you know, but it doesn't do that. I think that it would be great otherwise, but even then you'd have to wait a turn to use it. I'm just really not impressed by this card. One of the better things I can say about it is that at 3 mana, it's not cut downable, it's not boltable. So I guess that's fine, but it's still just not a very good looking card, honestly. So there was a time when a 3 mana 2/4 vigilance would be worth pointing out too, but just we're not in those days. So I'm going to give this like a 2. Seriously. 1.75 even? It's a 2. It's at least a 2. Witch's Mark, a great Tormenting Voice, really good Tormenting Voice. I failed to point this out too, but it's better than Tormenting Voice in multiple other ways that I didn't point out in the spoiler video. You know, with Tormenting Voice and a lot of other cards like it, Cathartic Reunion, whatever, you have to discard cards as a consequence of casting the spell. As an additional cost to cast it, you discard cards. You're not doing that with this one. So if they counter Witch's Mark, you're not out a card, which is pretty relevant, you know? But a Wicked Roll token, a cool, that's great. That is super sweet frosting. So I like this card a lot. I'm just going to give it a 2.25. Tormenting Voice has been niche playable from time to time, and this is way better. So. Witch Stalker Frenzy. This is the other spell. I referred to this earlier. The red spell in the set that allows us to kill a Sheldred pretty easily, whether they're attacking into us or we're attacking into them. We should be able to take out Sheldred for like 2 mana fairly easily, and sometimes just 1 too. So I think this card is quite playable as a removal spell. I'll give it a 2. 2.25. 2.25. Woodland Acolyte is next. A lot of value on this guy, man. 3 mana 2/2 that draws a card when it ETBs, or just for 1 mana instant speed, you get Reclaim. Put target permanent from your card graveyard on top of your library. Obviously, if you play like end of your turn, this guy, in the Wilds, and then on your turn you play this guy. Well, I guess you draw the card. I guess you draw the card for your turn. You know what I'm trying to say, though. I guess if you have 4 mana, you can Mend the Wilds, put a card on top, then play Acolyte and immediately draw it, which does seem neat. That does seem neat. Cool guy. I'm going to give him a 2.25, but I don't think he's going to see as much play as Witchstalker Frenzy or anything. Just in a vacuum, this guy has a ton of value on him, and I really like him. Yenna, Red Tooth Agent, a very commander playable card from the set, but beyond commander playability, I actually don't think the card is that playable in standard. It is a 4 mana 4/4, not an embarrassing stat line, but not amazing either. You have to pay 2 mana to use it, which I don't love. But I mean, think of it like a Kiki Jiki or something, you know, or like a reflection of Kiki Jiki on Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Just instead of 1 mana, get rid of it at end of turn, target a creature. It's 2 mana, double the mana, target enchantment, don't get rid of it at end of turn. That's actually pretty good if you can do it, but it costs 4 mana to get into play, wait a turn, and then 2 more mana to actually use. Cuts into your mana usage on the next turn. So I think it's a fair card, but does that mean it's bad? No, no. The definition of fair is decent, good, not bad. So I have to give this like a 2.75, but this could be much higher than I'm currently rating it. Being able to copy just like removal enchantments, like Borrowed Time, Pacifism Effects, Ossification, that could be pretty good. Just copying them once, you know. But obviously copying other like big important enchantments, you know, like you can copy the white Virtue in this set. You can copy any of the Virtue enchantments from this set. Because it won't be legendary. You can only copy them once because it has to not have the same name as another thing you control, right? But you can copy like the white Virtue and get +2/+2, 2 counters on every creature every turn. Copy the black Virtue and get 2 things from a graveyard every turn, right? So that seems cute. And obviously you can copy stuff like, if you're a mad lad, like Arcane Bombardment and all will be one. There's all kinds of crazy enchantments to copy. But even stuff like, Hallowed Haunting, back on a more sort of realistic tip, seem like great targets for this. Sagas seem like great targets for this, especially if you're about to lose one of the sagas. So I don't know. I think this might actually have some standard playability, which is why I'm giving it a 2.75. But I don't think that it's that. I don't think it's like 3.5 strong. But I could be wrong. We've seen recently that copying stuff like this is busted. So we'll see about it. I believe, though, that we have reached the end. This has got to be the fastest ever. Right now, my record time says 2 hours and 4 minutes. That, I believe, means that we have blazed past our best, dude. I think our best is like 2 hours and 37 minutes. We have crushed it, dude. We have absolutely murdered it, dude. But just wow. Yeah, you were flying. Yeah, on a couple of these cards, I was like, 1.5. I hate it. So, yeah, dude, we didn't get it under, my dream is under 2 hours. We didn't quite get it there, but we were close, man. We were close. So, wow, dude. Hey, everyone watching on YouTube, remember, Twitch people, stick around after this for just a little bit while I kind of close out the night and all that. But in any case, yeah, YouTube watchers, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you felt about it. As usual, a lot of like anywhere between 2 and 2.75s. You got to really pay attention to those 3.5s, those 3.25s. Those are the cards I think are best and will almost certainly see some amount of standard play. But as usual, I think that a set that has a lot of anywhere between like 2 and 3 or 2 and 2.75, I actually think those are the best sets. Nothing is super busted, broken. Nothing's too scuffed either. There's some only limited playable cards, but you have to expect that. That's fine. That's design. They have to do that. All in all, though, I think this is yet another set in a line of sets now since Kamigawa, that have just had a lot of really playable, like uncommons, right? Some cool looking rares that won't be like $20 a piece, but are still going to be really fun to build decks around, And I like that. I really, really like that in a set. I think this is a good looking set in terms of flavor, but also in terms of like actual relevance card wise, power wise. So I liked it, but just let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. Don't worry. We're going to do the top 25. We're going to be doing the top 10 really soon, the top 10 sleepers really soon. We're going to be hopefully participating in early access. I think we are. After that, we're going to be putting the first Dank Jank of the season out, the first Deck Tech of the season. Join us on Patreon for the first poll in a couple of days. There's a lot going on, right? And of course, like and subscribe if you haven't done it yet. But aside from that, follow me on Twitch. I suppose you could be live on Twitch with all these good people over here right now, if only, right? So don't miss the next one. Follow on Twitch, sub if you can. It's free if you have an Amazon Prime subscription in your house, so you might as well, if you're not already using it, use it on me. I would really appreciate that. It would help me out a lot. But aside from that, check out the Patreon, $1 a month to get in there and vote on what deck you want to see first for Wilds of Eldraine season and beyond. So I'm going to end the YouTube portion of it right now. Just again, hit me up in the comments section. Let me know how you felt. Let's pull a card from the couch. I got to do that. Hold on real quick. What's it going to be? What's the card? Oh, you just keep getting bad cards. It's not bad. Remember, people thought this was going to be halfway decent when it came out. It's Floriferous Vine Wall. It's Floriferous Vine Wall. 1 and a green for a 0/2 plant wall with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a land from among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. 2 mana to sort of impulse for a land. Not a great card, but okay, this is fine. It's cubable maybe, but there's probably better options at cube. Just play Wall of Roots. It's better. But anyway, that's it again for the YouTube portion. Love everyone that's watching on YouTube just as much or whatever as I love people on Twitch. I just wish you could have been here. I miss you when you're not here. But that's all I got for now. I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.